How are those sign-up sheets coming? Has anyone not signed in yet? That's a lot of you. Okay.
We have two
I
going.
have 3 going.
Great.
I can get another one going.
Want some help with it?
No. Yeah. I'm good.
No problem. That's the thing with me.
We'll give it a couple more minutes to give people a chance to sign in.
Dina, can you hear me? I just want to test volume.
Yes, I can hear you.
That just sounded like it was coming out of my computer, didn't it? It was coming out of there?
Yeah. You're good.
And Gina, can you see the site plan I put up?
Yes,
It's being shared?
yep.
Okay, great. Perfect.
All right, we have
And did you have a chance to add those new exhibits that Pete just sent you?
Yep, everything should be on the database.
Okay, great. I'm gonna see if, make sure I can get it from here.
There's many people that are knocking with him, ready to scream.
Under status. Or what I put there.
So you can, so you're here for both yourself and for, take all the space you need, so yourself and whoever you're representing.
Oh, I'm just doing myself.
Oh, okay.
And then criteria, just list the criteria.
Yeah, whichever criteria. Okay.
I don't see the 2 PowerPoints yet, Stephanie. Let me just check on it.
Okay, yeah, I was looking for that too.
I did move them over, but they're big files, so maybe it's just taking a minute.
There did you get a, sign in for the town hall? Actually.
So Stephanie, they have been moved over to the database. They just haven't had a minute to upload that
Yeah.
yet, so I'm gonna keep an eye on it.
No, I think they're there, 30 and 31, right?
Yes, oh, good, okay.
Look for criteria, if I'm doing one air noise and water, do I list those or just one?
You can say,
I just put one.
yeah, just put one is fine.
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay, it's gonna be two.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's fine too. That one?
Back from the end.
Okay, I'll do it.
From the youngest.
Yeah, give it a second. There.
Okay, just a second. Is that fine? Mhm.
It's a good thing.
Ready?
Ready?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good to see a lot of people. Today is December 16th, 2025, and we are the District 3 Environmental Commission meeting in Woodstock, Vermont for the hearing of application 3W0568-4 filed by the Woodstock Inn for the demolition of two buildings located at 14 and 16 South Street here in Woodstock. I am Cheryl Harvey. I am the chair of the District 3 Commission. I live in Rochester, Vermont. My fellow commissioner members are Suzanne Butterfield from Stockbridge and Rod McClay from Stratford. Here with me is Peter Kopsko, the district coordinator for District 3, as well as Stephanie Guile, the district coordinator for District 2, who is here to assist with the audio-visual equipment. We ask that you silence your phones, please. Thank you. In accordance with 1 VSA 312 Vermont Open Meeting Law, we confirm that we have taken the following steps. We're providing a public access to the meeting online video conference with additional access offered by telephone. We use the Microsoft Teams for this hybrid meeting. All members of the commission have the ability to communicate during this meeting, and the public has access to listen to, and if desired, to participate by attending in person, downloading the Microsoft Teams application, or by calling the toll-free number provided in the meeting notice. In addition, we have provided public notice for instructions for accessing the meeting. The public notice includes information about how to access the meeting using the telephone or Microsoft Word. That document using those instructions can be found at the Act 250 database online. If you're having a problem using Teams on your computer, you can call into the meeting on your telephone by dialing 802-828-7667 and enter 202-621-668 #. The numbers are in the hearing notice as well, if you need to look them up. For those participating by phone, you need to press *5 to raise your hand and your microphone will be enabled. Then press *6 to unmute your microphone. Is there anyone online, Stephanie?
There are, yes, there are a couple
Okay.
people.
Okay. Now, next we have a couple housekeeping items to take care of. This meeting is subject to Vermont open meeting law. By participating, you are consenting to being audio and visually recorded, and for that record to be published in the board's online database and/or the YouTube channel. Any written information or exhibits provided to the commission or Act 250 staff regarding this official state business is considered public record and will be part of the permanent record to be published at the board's online database. The chat function has been disabled for this Teams meeting. This meeting is being recorded, including any background noises, such as barking dogs, personal conversations, etc., if your microphone is not muted. Please mute your microphone when not speaking. If you'd like to speak during the hearing, please raise your hand if you're here in the hearing room. If you're participating online via Teams, please use the raise hand function, which is located on the toolbar on the top center of your screen. If you're participating exclusively by phone, please press *6 to unmute and speak up so we can hear you. For the audiovisual record and for the benefit of those participating solely by telephone, please state your name before speaking, and if relevant, your street address. Finally, and this is important, do not log into Microsoft Teams meeting on the computer or other device and participate on your phone at the same time, because this will cause a very distracting audio feedback that will greatly disrupt the hearing. Attendance. Let's start the meeting by a roll call for all people participating in the meeting. Is there anyone in the room that has not signed up using the sign-in sheet? I'll ask Coordinator Costco to to confirm attendance of participants in the room.
Let's start the set. Anyone else? Any other sheets floating around? Oh.
How many sign-in sheets are there? Just so I'll write it down.
6.
Six.
Okay. What should we do? I'm going to read off the names, and why don't you just raise your hand when I read your name? So we have Tracy Phillips. Great. Yeah, okay. So we have Charles and Ann. Sorry, Sincerebo. Say it again. Sincerebo. I was close. All right. Richard Wacker. BJ Dunn. Is it Kim Yang? Keen. Sorry. Judith Geiger. Robert Pear. Philip Newberg. Suzanne Wooten. Lauren Thompson. We've got Wade Treadway. Janine Wickeneller. Close. Alicia, is it, I can't read the cursive, sorry. Manel, okay. And Henry Healy and Stephanie Applefeller, close. Sally Gorman, Sandra and Ken, Niemzik, thanks. My name's tough too. Roberta Rowland, Steve Ismoot. Is that right? Okay. John Higgins, Ben Pauley, David Cooper, Courtney D'Amato, Wendy Spector, Charlie Degener, okay. Susan Fuller, Thomas Beck, David Hill, Jenna sorry, that's very small, Jenna. Lapachinsky. Okay. Molly Meacham, Savannah Spanis, Emily Collins, Seth Newman, Alyssa Tarlow, Tom Phillips, Beverly Humster. No? Humpstone. Okay. Thank you. Charlotte Hollingsworth, Emma Stanton, and Wendy Wright Marinan. Okay. And then.
Okay, now, Commissioner Gill, could you please read the names from the people that are participating on the team's meeting list?
Sure. So Gina from Act 250 is here. Kathleen Taft from A&R and Greg Sozinski from Historic Preservation, State of Vermont.
Okay, is everyone, I think we've gone through it a few times, so I want to make sure everyone is signed in properly. Someone just came in the door.
Okay.
So.
I'll bring you a sign-in sheet in a minute.
Okay.
Looking ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, let's proceed. Important. All people requesting party status and other persons that would like to continue to receive documents associated with this proceeding must provide us with an email or a mailing address. So if you don't think things were taken care of in the sign-up sheets, you can catch us at the end of the hearing. Now, if you're participating remotely via Teams, please email the commissioner via your district office, describe your interest in the proceedings, and provide your full name and full contact information. You can find an email address for the district office on the official notice of this hearing, or just speak up and we will help you. If you don't give us your contact information, then there's no way that we can contact you in the future. So, is everybody online all set?
I think so.
Okay. Now, this is regarding a conflict of interest. So the commission has reviewed all the materials submitted with the application, in part with an eye viewing on identifying any conflicts of interest that the commissioners may have. We're not aware of any conflict of interest that needs to be disclosed at this time. Does anyone have a concern about the commissioners who would be reviewing this application? Okay. Ex parte communication. Outside of today's proceedings, may I remind you that remind everyone that communication, whether by letter, email, telephone, or in person, must flow through Peter Costco, our district coordinator, and not through the parties to the commission, and not other parties or the commission members. Okay. I'm going to ask everyone who thinks they might address the commission during this hearing to swear or affirm that you are telling the truth. Accordingly, everyone who expects to address us, please raise your right hand at this time. Okay? Now, do you swear to affirm that the testimony or evidence that you shall provide relative to the consideration of the application shall be truthful, accurate, and under the pains and penalties of perjury? If so, say I do.
I do.
Okay. Now I'd like to make some comments on party status and the process of participating in the hearing. Process for participation in the hearing. Our charge is to collect evidence as to whether this project meets the requirements of Act 250, and based upon the evidence to decide to either issue a permit with conditions, or deny a permit. We gather information to make an informed decision. This hearing is part of the process to collect that evidence. You might want to participate in this meeting as a party. Party status is outlined in the Act 250 statutes. It's important mainly for two reasons. First, the party may introduce evidence, bring in experts or other witnesses to testify, and take part in the arguments. Second, only the party or someone who has been denied party status may appeal our decision in the environmental court. For most people, party status is decided on an issue-by-issue basis. Act 250 is organized around 32 criteria and sub-criteria. Therefore, when it's your turn, please identify yourself, where your property is located, and identify each Act 250 criteria under which you believe the project will adversely affect you or your property. Then explain how you think that the project will have specific impacts on you under each of the specific criteria. The commission will make party status determinations on a preliminary basis now so that we can organize the hearing. Sometimes, after we hear all the testimony, we decide that while it appears that at first that someone should have party status under a specific Act 250 criterion, ultimately they do not prove or document an impact under the criterion. We make final party status determination when we issue a final decision. There are three major categories through which a person may participate in the Act 250 hearing. First, the Vermont legislature has determined that certain persons are entitled to have rights under Vermont statute to participate in the party. We refer to those persons as party of right or statutory parties. The state of Vermont and all of its agencies, town select boards, municipal planning commissions, regional planning commissions are parties by right. Statutory parties should introduce themselves if they haven't already, but they do not need to request party status. Second, any person that may be admitted as a party if you can show a particular interest unique to them that might be affected by the project and demonstrate that their interest is related to any Act 250 criteria. For those are admitted as parties that have a right to appeal the commission's decision. Finally, even if you're not qualified as a party in this proceedings, the commission may allow you to participate as a friend of the commission if you are able to offer commission certain information that might not otherwise be available to us. For example, you might be an attorney, an engineer, a scientist with specialized knowledge that might inform the proceedings. Within the discretion of the commission, your participation may be limited. Friends of the commission do not have appeal rights to appeal the commission's decision. Please note that no one is required to seek party status or friend of the commission status. Some people may simply want to listen and become more informed about the project. All are welcome to watch. So, now, for the record, the commission visited the site earlier today.
Wait, let's do that. I think let's do the party status. I think
Okay,
some of the instructions got dropped.
okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Coordinator Costco to lead us through the party status requirements.
Oh, actually, it is further down the script.
It is
Let's
further
do it.
down.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so we had a couple people join us. If you wouldn't mind signing in. You all finish signing? Okay. Okay. So who's here? Let's start with, we have a lot of people here, so I'm trying to think of how to do this. Who here is a statutory party? Anyone from the town regional planning commission? Okay. All right, so who among you are going to be requesting party status? Can I get a show of hands? Okay, and are you all asking individually, or, and as you wrote this down on the sign-in sheets, but I haven't had a chance to look at them closely yet. Are you doing it as a group? Some of you. Individually, okay. All right, so let's do, let me get these sign-in sheets back. Anyone else? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Downside of having so many sheets is I gotta find you all. Okay, so let's start here. So who, raise your hands again? You're asking, so go ahead. Why don't you tell me your name and where you are and why you're requesting party status and which criteria?
My name is Jeffrey Kahn, and I live at 25 South Street. So I received an email saying that as an adjacent property owner. You gotta stand up. Please.
Can hear you.
Oh, okay. 25 South Street, I'm an adjacent property owner. I received a listing from there.
Okay, and what issues are you requesting party status? Like what criteria, and if you need help, let me know. What issues do you have?
More like comments
Okay,
as opposed to issues
so about,
the demolition, proposed demolition of the two houses of application.
and are you concerned about aesthetics, noise, construction? What are the issues that you are?
My concern is for the health and vitality of Woodstock. And I think that there's a balance going on here between historic preservation, which is important in this town.
So I'm sorry, so right now we're gonna, try to figure out who's gonna be a party, and we'll take arguments from and testimony later. So right now, I just want to know,
A party because I'm right near there.
directly adjacent, and you are concerned about historic preservation and,
And also the economic vitality of Woodstock.
all right, next, let's move in this direction. Go ahead.
Do you want objections or anything like as we go, or just?
I don't know. Yeah, we could do that.
whatever?
You wanna
I
object?
mean, it's gonna be the same. We don't object to anyone participating, but, we just need to hear a particular interest.
Well, I definitely heard,
I heard-
historic preservation.
I think everyone here, including my client, is very concerned with historic preservation.
Okay.
So that's a generalized concern, but how.
Do you have an objection to,
I would be interested to know if Mr. Khan can see these buildings from his property.
can you see the buildings from your property?
In the summertime, I can.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Robert?
My name is Robert Pear. I live at 23 High Street, a property adjoining the in-campus complex. My house is approximately 495 feet from the proposed demolition site. And I have some maps here. We'd like to have those, 5 copies there. I oppose the application to demolish 2 homes at 14 and 16 South Street under criteria 1, air, noise, and water, 5, A and B, transportation, and 8, aesthetics, and 8, historic sites for the following reasons. Criteria 1, air. The demolition will create airborne dust containing asbestos, lead, and mold. I am concerned about my exposure as well as the exposure of the children at the elementary school who would be particularly susceptible. Criterion 1, noise. Considerable noise will be generated by the demolition. The heavy machinery used and the trucks loading and maneuvering, dumpsters being delivered and picked up, and trucks on our roadways. I'm concerned about my exposure as well as the exposure of the children at the elementary school. Criterion 1, water. 2 storm drains are located on South Street directly in front of the demo site, and 1 on Cross Street, also adjacent to the site. Potentially hazardous dust or debris could end up in the storm drains or be washed into the storm drains during a rainstorm. The drainage from these storm drains end up in the Kedron Brook, which runs along my property on High Street, and my property line extends to the center of that brook. I'm concerned about any effects pollutants may have on the Kedron Brook. Criterion 5A and B, transportation. And although limited in duration, trucking operations may create unsafe traffic conditions. Both Cross Street and High Street are narrow streets choked down to 1 lane with parking allowed on one side, which doesn't allow for safe passage of large vehicles. An 8-ton restriction is also in place on High Street. I am concerned that trucks will choose to use these side streets rather than the state highway routes, which would create a traffic hazard and create unsafe conditions for the many children in our neighborhood. And the noise and vibration of the trucks would also be disruptive. Criterion 8, aesthetics. The homes at 14 and 16 South Street contribute to our aesthetic built environment and streetscape, and their loss will effectively degrade the overall aesthetics in our village. And one of the reasons my wife and I chose to live in Woodstock is because of the beauty of both the built and natural environment not typically found in other places. And I am concerned that our enjoyment of Woodstock will be diminished by the loss of these 2 buildings. Criterion 8, historic sites. The homes are found to be contributing historic resources, and are listed on the National Historic Register, as is my own. I am concerned that losing these buildings will degrade our historic resources. I believe the houses could be moved to a nearby location in the historic district, preserved and used for employee housing. I have identified 3 sites that this could possibly take place. This would preserve and continue the 2 homes as contributing historic resources in our village and allow the inn to attain its goal of future expansion of additional guest rooms into that last remaining area on the block. Thank you.
Thank you. Any objections?
Yes, object to that, yeah. There's just no particular interest, but no objection to participate under any of the criteria.
So you're saying you'd like him to have friend?
No, I'm not saying
Commission
that. That would be
status?
up to the commission, but if the commission were to grant such capacity, we don't object. But we do object to standards.
Do you have a question, sir?
Yes. Could you identify who that person is?
Sir, would you introduce yourself to the group?
David Cooper, I'm an attorney for the resort.
Okay, next over here, so.
Wade Treadway, and I'm here asking for party status. I think that many of the criterion can be addressed with this application, but I think the most relevant, as I see it, are criterion number 8, the visual aesthetics, coupled with the historic sites. And I would very strongly echo the previous application for party status in that what we see with these structures is a
So Mr. Treadway, so before we get into argument, really what I want to know here is, what the commission needs to know here is how those impact you specifically and directly.
Mm-hmm.
they impact me directly by my aesthetic and influence of what I see the village being.
Okay, where do you, and
Where do
is
you
this-
live, sir?
Yeah, where do you live?
I
Where
live
is it?
on Randall Road.
Okay.
And yet travel South Street virtually every day.
Can I add something? Do you mind just,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
or do you want to just tell them what particularized interest is?
Um,
I think we're just trying to gather whether people who are requesting party status, whether they have a particularized interest. And a particularized interest is an interest that's greater and more specific than someone of the general public. So, if you can see the project, if it is on your travel route, those are particularized interests that are greater than the general public. But that's what this portion is for, to try to get those details to the commission.
Okay. The next criterion that I feel this falls under would be impacted growth. I'm chairman of the Development Review Board of Woodstock and been on the Planning Commission for many years. And I see it very important to maintain what we have as it is, particularly in this case where there's no replacement. It's just elimination.
Okay.
Thank you.
Same section.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm Philip Newberg, FAIA, registered architect of 40+ years and an expert with experience in historic buildings. I'm a member of the College of Fellows of the American Institute of Architects and an expert in the field of historic preservation. I've served for 5 years as the chair of the now defunct Village Design Review Board, which unanimously advised the VDR to reject the WRC's proposal for demolition I also chair the Woodstock Village Historic Preservation Commission, certified government of the Division of Historic Preservation.
Okay, and are you seeking party status on behalf of those entities, those
Yes,
organizations,
I'm
or
also
on
a
your own?
resident of the Historic District and the Design Review District at 4 Church Street across the street.
You live across the street?
Yes,
So, and can you see the
but I'm
building?
adversely affected by this action.
Okay, you can see the buildings.
It's
Okay.
less than a quarter mile from my house. I'm within the area of potential effects. Everyone in Woodstock is within the area of potential effects as the DHP describes it.
Okay, objection?
Yeah, I mean, same objection, but I wasn't clear if he, is moving for standing for his individual capacity or whether he was granted authority to seek party status on the entities he mentioned.
Individual.
You're individual,
Just
okay.
individual. Okay. Okay, are you asking for party status? Go ahead.
My name is Wendy Wright Marinan. I live at 39 Mountain Avenue in the village, which is also part of the Woodstock Village Historic District and also part of our design review overlay. I own an 1860s Greek revival farmhouse. I bought it and live in it 25 years ago. I maintain it with honor. I bought my house in this community because I was honored to be part of a community that treasures the evolution in history. I also volunteer.
Again,
I know.
so, yeah, so right now.
Criterion 8 all the way.
Okay,
I serve as a village historic preservation commissioner as well.
okay,
And so my interest, I'm representing myself for those reasons.
and do you have a particularized interest? Can you see it? Do you see the project?
I live in, it's a walking village.
Huh?
It's part of my regular outings, especially when I go exercise. I celebrate what I see aesthetically, and treasure it and believe in it. I'm a trained artist.
No objection.
Next, moving in this direction. Again, raise your hands if you're seeking party status, and I'll call on you. Go ahead, ma'am, whose name I butchered previously.
I'm Elisa Charlo. I live at 4 Church Street, which is right next door to where we are now. So I'm 2 blocks away from the site. I don't see it from my home, but I do go to the school all the time. My daughter went to school there the last 2 years. The school's directly across at 15 South Street, directly across from these 2 buildings. I'm also the treasurer of the PTO. So I spend a lot of time at the school and with the families and the kids at the school. And so that is my personal connection to directly being related to that area. Although I think just that I have a house, as a few others have said, in the historic district, in the design area, if you remove a historic home from anywhere, that impacts everyone in that district because it degrades the historic district completely by shrinking it. And also encourages others to let their houses go to disarray, which could further shrink the district. So I think that in relation to the school, but also just having a house that is historic puts me as relevant or whatever the wording is. Do you want us to turn in these?
Yeah, if you have them, I'll take them. And you don't have to. Just coming here is usually enough, but it's just helpful for me.
Sure.
Definitely. Thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Same objection.
Same objection. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Moving in this direction, anyone over here? Go ahead, raise your hand if you're seeking party status. Okay, go ahead.
Wendy Spector, 16 The Green. I'm in a butter directly across the street from the inn. I can see the properties if I scooch my head down the street. I'm interested in the inn as a vital member of the economic infrastructure of our town. And I feel very strongly that there has to be a balance between historic preservation and economic vitality. So that's my interest in understanding better that trade-off.
How would so what criteria are you?
To be honest, have not like looked at all the lists, but
So aesthetics,
yeah,
historic
I would say
preservation.
aesthetic and historic preservation. And if there was an economic development one, I would include that as well. No, there isn't one. Okay.
No objection.
No objection. Yeah.
That's fine.
All right, next, anyone? Is there anyone else? Oh, yep, there you
Yeah,
go.
got another
Sorry,
hand.
I'm looking.
Yeah.
Trying.
I'm Jenna Lopchinsky. I'm a historic preservation professional with 15 years of experience. I work for the Preservation Trust of Vermont, so I'm representing them today. So we would be a nonprofit with affected members. We are concerned with criteria 8. We oppose the project as currently planned. We're concerned about the loss of contributing resources to the National Register District. We believe that further due diligence is needed before demolition is approved. We're also concerned about potential demolition undermining the Act 250 mitigation process. Maintenance was a condition of the previous permit, and we don't believe that these buildings have been maintained as well as they could have been, and that demolition based on their current condition violates that previous permit. And, that could open up a potential door to other projects following, unfortunately, a similar path as this one, and that could deeply affect the work we do across the state. We worked on 350 projects in 152 communities last year, so we're deeply involved in a lot of the communities in Vermont.
Objection. I mean, as far as I know, they're not a state agency. And so, there are some cases that have discussed CLF and other types of nonprofit organizations that do not qualify for party status. So object to that.
Can you, can you identify members who are impacted?
We're not a membership-based organization. We don't have members in that way, but we are the only preservation nonprofit that covers the entire state of Vermont. We touch every corner with the work that we do.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'm Michael Ricci. I'm here wearing 3 hats. One is for the library, where we appreciate the Historic Preservation Society, and they have funded, they helped to fund the last big project that we did at the library, which was repointing the stone on the exterior. I'm also here as an abutter for the library and abutter. I'm also a side judge at the courthouse, which abuts the inn as well. And I live 2 doors down here on Church Street in the historic district, and also feel that we're eroding the historic district. My concerns for the library and for the courthouse are with noise and traffic. And I even add the air pollution.
And so you're here, when you say you're for the library, what's your role at the library as your title?
I'm Director of Community Relations.
And are you authorized by the library?
Same objection.
Sorry, no.
No particular highest interest.
No, yeah.
Didn't hear, you could see the building.
So who has an interest here, according to the attorney for the resort? Should we all just leave and, the 2 people?
So, wait, so, okay. You have a question in there and then some argument. Do you want to respond to the question or?
Not really.
So, as Stephanie sort of reiterated earlier, this is party status is laid out in the statute, by the legislature. It's a quasi judicial, proceeding. One has to have party status. You could think of it as similar to standing in court, in order to participate. The commission is tasked with deciding who, is entitled to party status. In order to participate in the hearing, you need to have party status or friend of the commission status, as Cheryl described earlier. Everyone's welcome to watch, but Act 250 proceedings are not like some other proceedings, like some town proceedings where people are welcome to share their opinions or express their opinions in support or against a project. You need to have party status in order to participate. It's a little bit more, it's very informal, but it's a little bit more like court in that respect. Does that help answer your question?
To someone having party status, disqualified?
No, the commission, the inn through its attorney has objected to your request for party status and most of the requests for party status here. But the commission will now make a preliminary decision about party status with respect to each of the requests. And I'm going to check one more time to make sure we captured everybody who wants to request party status. So what we'll probably do is we'll take a break, and the commission will deliberate on it. We'll come back in a couple of minutes, give you a preliminary ruling on that, and then we'll proceed with taking testimony. Okay? And those people who are parties will be able to participate, and those people who are not parties are absolutely welcome to stay and watch. Anyone else with questions? So let's do, any questions about that? Has your hand up? Is that a question?
Would you please read the exact statute of what party status is?
No, sorry.
No?
I don't have it right here, I think. It is what we just described. You need to have a particularized interest in the application and be able to show, with respect to, how it impacts you and respect to one of the 32 criteria / sub-criteria. Anyone else? Sorry, I just don't have, I can't break out that. We got a lot of ground to cover today. Do we have anyone else who's requesting party status? Do you have a question?
He's finding the statute for you.
That's okay. I really don't want to read it. I want to move on. We have the scripts. We've described it now several times. I'm quite confident we've described it accurately. Anyone else who would looking to request party status? Do you guys have any questions? All right, let's take you want to take a?
Yes.
Okay, we'll take a recess, probably 10 minutes. Okay, sound good?
Yeah.
Stay we
Why don't we plan to be back at 11?
Yes.
Just a reminder, the recording is still going.
Oh yeah, the recording is still happening, so we're not.
Just be mindful.
Oh, we're just gonna break. I can't. Oh, no, we're not gonna go in that order. We'll go in the order of the criteria, and we're gonna take testimony from everybody. But if you have party status, if you wanna, we'll talk. Yeah, I understand. What time do you need to get to work? Well, it's a hearing, right? Go ahead, I got it.
I just don't know. Right.
He's actually gonna answer.
Great.
They knew they had their pictures.
No, it's okay.
Thank you.
And so we got.
See, I think I don't qualify. Yeah.
Where you was like, yeah, I'm a high school. You know, everybody.
And I'm sure they have to. And,
I live in Temple. Yes, yeah, right up the top. A good day for the drive.
Thinking about the alternatives.
Good job. Yeah. Yeah, it's really nice. Now, the research prize was, forward. Here's one, something about it. Gateway. She's as part of
I asked her what it like.
You know, like all this stuff.
It's what she's. Yes. Wow. What else?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so. Oh, yeah. You're good at it. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Fun part.
Yeah. No, maybe not. I don't know what.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so.
It was just not. Yeah.
Right, that's right, right. And I remember from grandma.
Just.
Yeah.
Just.
That's good. A lot of.
So I had to.
You don't have to file.
You got a pen?
I have your pen.
That one,
I've got other pens.
I've got all sorts of. You all set?
You as a.
All right. We, took us a little longer. That's a lot to go over. Come on in. All right, so we're recording and everything's still moving along, right?
Yep.
All right, so the commission deliberated, and since I took the notes, I'll read off the decisions. And again, these are preliminary. So Jeffrey Kahn, yes, as to the commission has decided to grant preliminary party status, and that'll be the case for everybody. Okay, so to re-say it, it's all preliminary. For aesthetics and historic preservation, Robert Pear, yes, as to all of the criteria you raised, which was 1 with respect to noise, and sorry.
5A and B.
Yeah, 5A, 8, 5A and B, 8, everything you requested. Wade, Treadway, sorry, no. The commission felt that you were too far away to demonstrate a particularized interest. You're welcome to stay and observe though. Philip Newberg, yes, with respect to historic preservation. Wendy Wright Meriden, yes, as to historic preservation and aesthetics. Same for Alyssa Tarlow, yes, with respect to criterion 8, historic preservation and aesthetics. Same goes for Wendy Spector. Jenny from historic preservation, Friends of Commission status. And we would give you an opportunity, the commission would give you an opportunity so you can participate today. And there'll be a hearing recess order. If you want to sort of enlarge on your argument about how you have a sort of supplement your argument about how you have a particularized interest, you can do so then. And then Michael Ritchie, yes, as to everything you mentioned, which was 1, 5, and 8. So noise, traffic, and aesthetics, and historic preservation. Okay.
We have one hand
Any
up.
questions?
One, did you deny me of that, or did you?
Which
For
part?
noise and air pollution at the site
Um,
in relation to the school.
I think so.
I don't recall that. Do you recall that?
I remember she mentioned it in her,
Okay.
in her talk
So spends a lot of time there.
at
Okay.
the school.
So yes, as to 1, 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the last thing is several of you came over and asked if, you mentioned you had to go. We're going to have the hearing now. If you want to file comments, you can do so. There's going to be at the end of the hearing, typically, and there certainly will be in this case, there will be what's called a hearing recess period. We'll be setting deadlines for, there'll be a notice will go out to everybody who's on the service list, including everybody who requested party status, with deadlines as to when we're going to be requesting that you get back to us with specific things, including arguments and the exhibits that come up today that haven't been filed, that kind of thing. There's also going to be a period of time for people to rebut any of those arguments as well. Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, for the record, the commission visited the site earlier today where we reviewed the site plan, walked around the property and observed the two houses to be demolished and the overall location. That pretty much says it all, but we did walk through each of the buildings, and we did take into consideration the adjacent buildings, and where the inn is located, for that. Anything else you folks want to mention about the site visit? Okay. So remember that any comments made at the site visit are not recorded and are not part of the record. I know we talked to quite a few people there and people talked to us. So anyway, all set. Next, we're going to ask the applicant to present a brief overall general view of the project, keeping in mind the commission has read the application and the exhibits. Please briefly explain how the project addresses all Act 250 criteria. And I was thinking, because of everybody, do you think maybe we can take that table and move it there and have them stand near that table so that the room can hear them better? Or?
Sure.
Okay. Can you, just so that they can stand against that wall so that everybody can hear you best? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, folks.
Perfect.
So please identify yourselves and what your part is with the application.
And just one thing we talked about that was in the script. So, David, the commission's going to hear any arguments about the Rule 34E issue, but also take testimony and not make any decisions today. So,
I'm sorry, didn't you say you are?
We'll take any arguments about, so we got your briefing the other day about Rule 34E. Take any legal arguments you want to raise today, but otherwise not making any decisions about it, taking evidence and all the criteria.
Understood.
Okay.
Just a quick question. Now, do you want them to do the description and then you're going to announce the criteria?
Let's skip the criteria, so we did that plenty, and just move, let them do the description and roll into it.
Just want to make sure that we're all in order. Okay. Please.
Are we limiting the criteria?
Yeah, to the ones that came up, so,
So not all of them?
Not all of them. You got it, right?
Yeah.
And if there's anything you miss and people want to bring it up, we'll sort it out.
Thank you.
Okay, so would you please introduce yourself
Yeah,
and your position?
Yeah, my name is Benjamin Pauly. I'm the Director of Property Operations and Design at the Woodstock Inn Resort. I've been at the resort for 15 years. I started that job as a concierge, initially just to learn more about Woodstock. I love Woodstock, and live here for the many of the same reasons everybody else does. Know that it has magic, know that it has character. And I've worked for the resort last 15 years and moved my way up to the position I'm now in, which is part of the leadership team at the resort. There are 11 of us on the leadership team. There are 4 other members of the leadership team here. Our director of property, our director of people and culture, Judy, is here. Our controller, Lauren Thompson, Gabe, who is our project manager, and Keem is our director of spa. I just want to kind of overview the Woodstock Inn Resort. A lot of people have the impression that the Woodstock Resort is this corporation that is money hungry, greedy, and is in it for a profit. And in my experience, the 15 years, the exact opposite is true. The Woodstock Resort is a for-profit business, but unlike almost every single other resort that I know, it is solely owned by a foundation, the Woodstock Foundation. Its profit and any revenue stays within Woodstock. It goes back into its employees and it goes back into its infrastructure investments. So I feel really proud to work for the Woodstock Inn. I've loved my career there. I love being on the leadership team. And to kind of characterize the inn, it really is the employees that are driving the narrative. So there's not some Woodstock Inn corporate office that's telling us what to do. It is generated by that leadership team and the employees of the directive. I do have with me today a team member that will talk today as well. I initially started this process over a year ago in 2024. One of my first calls was to Department of Historic Preservation. I know Greg is on. I can't remember if I talked to Greg or if somebody there, just trying to get a feel of what the process was like of how to go through an application for this proposal. He convinced me very early on, you want to go with somebody who knows historic preservation and get a consultant to work on historic preservation. So I have Scott Newman with us. He's from 106 Associates that will talk about the historic preservation side of things later on. Stephen Smith, who has been an architect for the resort for 30, 40 years. Stephen has been an architect for the Marsh Billings Rockefeller National Historic Park and the architect for Billings Farm Museum, those same decades as well. And then John Higgins, the comment down right here is Stephen, that kind of knows all these experts. John Higgins will present a little bit on the kind of structural analysis of the buildings as well. And the love of Woodstock doesn't go unnoticed by all those team members. I don't think anybody would jump up and say that they're glad to be here to tear down these two buildings. And it is with a kind of cohesive look at the project that people are on board with this. And I hope Scott will, mention, he's a historic preservationist. He wouldn't have taken the job if he didn't see a holistic picture of what these houses look for. The application is pretty simple. I know I sent a presentation.
Just tell me when you're ready for it.
Yeah, you can put it on. Yeah. Which is very just visual kind of context wise to show the project and where it is on the in-campus. And most of these are exhibits, but I just wanted to have it up on the board just so everybody could see it as well, what we can see. The resort is a integral part of this community, and everybody looks at the success of the town and the success of the resort as one of the same. When we at the resort are looking at the business, we often talk about 1,000 moments to show our brand, and it's the same for the resort and the same for the village. There's thousands of moments.
I think I got to drag it over there. It popped up as a separate.
Can you enlarge that?
I thought I came over here because I thought
There
you were
we-
trying to click on it.
No.
Wall.
We'll see how effective these images are just from the light in the room. But the love of the resort and the love of Woodstock is the same. There are 1,000 different moments that really highlight the special nature of the resort, and there's thousands of moments that are special nature that make Woodstock Woodstock, and all varying degrees of impact to the people who live here. The Woodstock Resort image on the screen shows essentially its campus in the center of town. So the entire block that the inn is on, there are several structures that's highlighted in yellow, but impossible to see. Several structures on Mechanic Street across from Court Street. And then the adjacent block is filled with residences in our administration building and parking lot. And then there's just one residence in the middle there that is privately owned in that adjacent block. And the resort kind of historically is a relatively newish building in the timeline of things. It was built in 1968 and 69. The original inn, as you may know, existed on the front parking lots. It was built in 1890 and was torn down essentially with the reality that there was an inflection point at the resort. The ability for the resort to remain a competitive luxury destination required a change in its business. And that was a decision that was made that in order to remain relevant, a new resort had to be built, modern amenities, accessibility, fire suppression, comforts, everything in the above. So that the main in structure And the wing that is along Court Street was built in 1969. In 1990, the tavern extension was built on. That's the adjacent to the site to the north, which is right up against 14 South. That was built in the 90s. That project added on another 34 rooms. And then the spa addition in 2008 was 2008, 2009. Added on a facility of 10 treatment rooms. And you can go to the next slide. And so that kind of shows exactly what those sites are. And both of those additions to the resort essentially were inflection points of when the resort needed to add on to remain relevant. Just as a context, that tavern wing provides about 13% of the resort's revenue just in those 34 rooms. The resort as itself brings in about 35,000 guests a year. That spa addition has about 13,000 treatments a year, and only 50% of those are resort guests. So the other 50% are locals, visitors to the area. And both of those additions to the resort have been essential for the resort to be sustainable in the economics of the hospitality industry. As mentioned at the site visit, but I'll just kind of point out across the street of 1416 South is the Woodstock Elementary School, which is a non-contributing structure. The tavern wing addition is a non-contributing structure. The original inn is contributing. The spa addition is non-contributing as well. And the adjacent homes on the site below are all contributing structures, with the exception of one house that was moved to that site on the very south lower part of that photo. The administration building is also non-contributing, but those two buildings have been with the resorts. 14 South was purchased along with the original inn. It's named the Beach House because Lawrence always named the residences that he bought after the owner that owned them at the time of purchase or who lived there. So Beach is the name of the inhabitant of that building. He was the innkeeper of the original inn, or of that inn, when the resort was bought. 16 South, so that was purchased in 1968. 16 South was purchased later in 1987, I believe, from the Smith family, so that's why it's called Smith. And they have both been essentially used for their useful life as employee housing for the resort. So all the homes on the south block there that are highlighted in blue are employee housing, workforce housing. I'm sorry, exception of one is a guest house. And the buildings were used as employee housing. Late in their life, they were used for seasonal housing needs, and so they're used as dorm houses. 14 South had a furnace failure in 2004. I'm not exactly sure the extent of the damage that was done, but I do have records that show it was not deemed prudent to make the repairs at the time because the need for employee housing didn't warrant it. There wasn't a need to have employee housing. 16 South had a furnace failure in 2005, and in that case, I've heard testimony that it did have a substantial damage to the building because it was unoccupied at the time, and had so significant water damage all throughout the structure, and for the same reason, employee housing was not needed at that time. That is determined that they were not going to move forward with putting that back in line. The resort has done a lot of different studies over the history of those houses. One of the benefit of having an attic full of physical paper files is you can find, things that you never normally would in this day and age. So I have files from 1983, or maybe 85, early 1990s, 2000, 2010, 2018, 19, all on concepts of turning them into guest rooms. And for various reasons, they were not moved along. In 1983, there's a letter from the Director of Human Resources saying that employee housing was needed more than guest rooms, so the resort did not turn it into guest rooms. And from my understanding, most of the rest of the times that it was gone into stopped mainly for economic reasons. The amount to renovate the buildings was more than it was worth to get out of that use as a guest house. It just didn't make sense. The original permit stems from, Act 250 permit stems from the spa addition to the resort in 2008, 2009. And it was a condition that was put on that, I think condition 19, that was put on that looks at the structures as part of mitigation for building the spa, for moving the Paul barn, demolishing the Paul house, which was adjacent. In my understanding, it was kind of a similar presentation about why the Paul house should be demolished. And I think that was it, but the criteria 19 talks about maintenance and upkeep of the buildings. And it had current maintenance work, which was kind of defined as painting, clapboards, site work, and then also identified other things that they wanted to do, not specific tasks, but basically routinely inspect at least annually the interior, including attics, basements, and exterior buildings to identify deterioration or damages to the structures. And then address and repair in a timely and appropriate manner any deterioration or damage identified during routine inspections. And then goes on to say, submit future plans for demolition, relocation, or rehabilitation of either building to the division of the commission for review, comment, and approval. So the resort has submitted their inspection reports. We have done maintenance, excuse me, on the buildings. And in the reports, it highlights fixing doors, bulkheads, replacing steps, broken windows, replacing clapboards, painting the exterior of 14 South, 16 South, repaired a leak, filled in a sinkhole, repaired sliding doors, repairing windows, replacing garage doors, painting the metal roof, and replace exterior steps. And my role at the resort, I changed about 3 years ago. I previously was the master gardener of the inn and oversaw Kelly Bay Gardens. And my role kind of changed to start overseeing more of the grounds maintenance of the resort. And then in 2022, eventually started looking at the greater property operations department. We had a change in leadership from a president standpoint. A new president started, Bruce Grovetti, in 2023 in November. And our controller also retired in 2024. So in 2024 was kind of the first year that myself and Lauren as a controller were really in part of the process of looking at these buildings to maintain, and asked ourselves, where was the future of these two homes? And the reason we're doing that is because we've reached an inflection point. And if you were at the site tour, you definitely saw it, reach an inflection point where mothballing is not continuing to be a sustainable path forward for the resort. And it's primarily in a couple different ways. One, the cost to, and most notably, is repair roof is not a simple thing as just going up on the roof and repairing a few slates that are falling off. We got quotes for just repairing the roof at 14 South, which is adjacent to the resort. Both buildings, the slate roofs are, nearing end of life. The beach house was determined you could fix the slate roof. It was about $50,000 to fix the slate roof and redo all the flashing. 16 South, there wasn't any chance of saving the slate roof, and they were recommending changing the roof to a metal roof. Good advice from Stephen. If you're going to own the building more than 50 years, put a metal roof on it. Don't put an asphalt shingle roof on it. And so that cost was $96,000. In 2022, we painted 14 South to the tune of $40,000. And in 2024, we're looking at those costs, you know, a couple $100,000 to paint and repair or change roofs on the buildings. You know, realize that the cost to mothball had kind of changed into a significant investment that was needed to keep the buildings just in a vacant state. And in order to make that sort of investment, you really have to ask yourself, you know, what is the future use of those buildings, and does that make sense? So that question has come up many times over the history of the resort. In 2019, Stephen kind of led the initiative looking at those buildings, and specifically the beach house, which had a much better structure to it from the standpoint of the ability to convert it into guest rooms, and looked at the feasibility of that as a guest house of resort. And that's where we did the investigation into the structure of the buildings. The structure report that John Higgins did of both buildings, commissioned lead, asbestos, and mold testing of both the buildings, and went through a cost analysis with a contractor based on schematic design of turning that into a guest house at 14 South. And this was in 1919. I'll also say that the property has been investigated. When the spa was originally built, the first iteration was actually building the spa on that site with incorporating the houses. It was an exercise that was done. It basically enveloped the houses, kept the street front, and they were kind of wrapped around the spa on that site in order to retain the two structures. That was quickly found to be not feasible just because of the cost of renovating the structures, the need to upgrade the building codes to be accessible, to meet fire codes, to meet flood prevention codes. And that's what kind of transitioned to the spa addition that we see now. In 2011 to 2017, there was a big initiative for us to look at an alternative of the site and actually propose demolishing the buildings and building a addition to the resort that would expand its business capacities. A larger function site, had information and studies done that showed for the vitality of the resort, it needed to really expand, particularly its room count and, you know, its ability to hold functions. That project kind of came to a stall when we kind of changed presidents, and then with COVID, that kind of analysis of a market based on group business kind of went out the window, so that relevancy kind of went away. And the 2018-19 study that showed those costs, you know, at the time, it was estimated that the cost to renovate 14 South was about $1.8 million. And based on the condition of that house, kind of extrapolated what it would cost to renovate 16 South. And based on kind of current estimations of where construction costs have gone, those prices have ballooned to almost $2.8 and $3 million for each home. And that is for, you know, a level of standard for sure that is for a guest house. It's not, we're not looking at, you know, employee housing necessarily. The resort has about 25 different homes and structures for employee housing. I think we're probably the largest provider of workforce housing in Woodstock. followed by Twin Pines. It is one of the best offerings that the resort has to have that much workforce housing to be able to offer its employees. Coincidentally enough, all the leadership team members, with the exception of Gabe in the room, who are in the room, live in employee housing, workforce housing. It was a benefit and vision that Lawrence had that the employees at the resort could live and work in Woodstock and be a part of the community. We looked at those two homes and an alternative use, did not foresee a transition to a commercial use as viable, again, for the mentioned reasons of fire upgrades, accessibility upgrades, structure upgrades are different from residential building loads. The ability to use the houses for employee housing just don't make any economic sense. The employee housing that we do operate, we offer at a significant loss to the resort every single year. It's not an economic model where workforce housing drives revenue. And the amount of money to even turn those homes into workforce housing doesn't make any economic sense for the resort. Their viable use is not inherent in the structures, doesn't exist. So the cost to renovate in 2019 and the condition that they're in, or the analysis that was done to turn those into viable use, had nothing to do with lack of maintenance or what the condition the buildings were in. I should have asked this sooner, but I asked Stephen on the site visit, what did these buildings look like in 2019 when those reports were done? And he thought, pretty close to the same, exception a little bit wetter in the front rooms that obviously have the leaks in the window or the roofs. The cost to renovate those homes and the feasibility is tied to the several factors that have nothing to do with maintenance. It has to do with the structural inefficiencies of the buildings outlined in the structural report. They have to do with the end-of-life systems that exist in the houses. Both have roofing systems that are end of life and require significant upgrades to structures to kind of make them usable. All of their mechanical systems were at end of life or got taken out by Irene. Both of the houses flooded during Tropical Storm Irene. On the basement level, there are every single pretty much system of the house that you can imagine that needs to be upgraded. The amount of lead and asbestos in the home requires essentially that we have to gut the entire buildings. So the fact that when you walk around the inside of the building, it's been unheated for 20 years. I can't say I know of any particular way that a building that has gone unheated for 20 years wouldn't look in that condition due to the plaster and paint freezing and thawing over 20 years. But all of that could be in perfect condition, and the cost to renovate would look exactly the same because we have to pretty much gut the entire place to remove all the asbestos, remove the lead, insulate the buildings are uninsulated, complete new electrical systems, new plumbing systems, new heating systems, and the like. As part of that kind of due diligence of going with looking at alternative uses, we had to look at, is it possible to sell the properties to private parties? And that is not a feasible or prudent thing for the resort to do in any regards. As I think Act 250 is a good example, depending on what can happen, sometimes largely depends on who your neighbors are and if they have an objective to what you're doing. We do hold events on the back of the resort. And one of the biggest areas of contention is, sound decibels of the resorts and how those events affect neighboring properties. So to think that we'd want to sell properties and basically move that property line closer to our events doesn't really make financial sense. And the other thing is those two buildings, as you can see how the inn has expanded over time, the resort is obligated to have all its rooms located in the main structure. It's in the Woodstock zoning regulations. And the definition of inn, any expansion of the resort in guest rooms would have to remain in the main structure. And so the tavern wing is connected to the inn, the spa is connected to the inn, and any potential last place that the resort could expand to is most logically and even practical expanding onto that tavern wing. So while the resort doesn't have any plans to build right now, there's nothing in the hopper, there's no drawings, there's no conversations about what do we build. It is something that a business has to think about, is how do they change over time. When I talk about the resort as a luxury resort, it's in a different class than areas surrounding hospitality solutions. When we look at our competitive set, we are looking at Chatham Bars Inn on Cape Cod, we're looking at Mount Washington, we're looking at the Equinox, Stowe Mountain Lodge. People are choosing Woodstock as a destination for the amenities we offer, from skiing, from Nordics to mountain biking to spa, restaurants, and they are choosing Woodstock because of its character, right? Woodstock's inn's tagline used to be, Vermont's most beautiful address, fully recognizing the importance of the historical structure that surrounds the resort and the context that it exists in is largely due to the character of Woodstock and the historical integrity that is there. So there is a constant acknowledgement that the Woodstock Inn is part of the community. It's all of its amenity offerings are community assets. With, as I mentioned, restaurants, athletic club, spa, Nordic, S6. These are very integral parts of our community, and a reason why many people are here. And the vitality of the resort has been seen quite easily in the past, where if the resort has been closed, for example, in 2023, when we had the flooding and Irene during flooding, the impact to the town is substantial. It is the largest single contributor to the 1% sales of rooms and meals tax. It brings the largest number of visitors to the town that drive the economic engine of the retail and restaurants. And it is a entity that is supported by and supports the community. We looked into relocating the buildings. Would love to hear the thought of where buildings could be relocated. We looked at a couple of different options for relocating. If you could go to the next slide. The resort does not own any property. I'll just go through these really quick, just as context, because a new site visit was in testimony. This is 16 South that faces out onto Cross Street. Next. This is the obviously front elevations on South Street with the adjacent tavern wing right next to it, which again, the tavern wing kind of completely out of scale structure to the homes, kind of non-contributing structure to the left. And then next, this is looking down Cross Street. So you see on the left that one of the houses, the group of houses across the street. 16 South is set back. It clearly has a front elevation that is facing along South Street. And while it is adjacent to that block next to it, really doesn't engage that from its setback and from its kind of orientation out on the street. And then that shows kind of the view across the street, which is the Woodstock Elementary School, another non-contributing structure. And then next. And then again, hard to see, but this is looking north, where you can actually see the tavern, then it transitions to the two homes, and then across the street, marching down the line, are the adjacent block homes as well. And then next. So this is the two buildings on the site, 14 and 16 South. The garage in back, I didn't mention this now, but the garage in back of 16 South is used essentially as storage for mountain bikes and fly fishing equipment. 14 and 16 South remain pretty much completely vacant, with a better term, just a few storage items. The tavern wing on the left shows that air handling unit that I just put up, not air handling unit, sorry, cooling tower, adjacent to the resort as well. And then next. So in simple terms, our application is not for development, it's for deconstructing the two homes and turning it back, or turning it into green space, not back, but turning it into green space. There is, again, no plan to develop the site. Completely acknowledge the realities of the needs for the resort to grow in the future, but no plans are in the works or even talked about of how we're going to expand onto the site. The resort has much more infrastructure than it could ever, infrastructure investments needed than it ever could actually fund. So every year it is a balance of trying to figure out where is the best place to invest money to have a economic impact to remain viable into the future. So we're not in a position to propose any development on the site at this time. So the level of the landscape plan is really try to keep it an open plan. There are some large existing trees on site that we'd like to keep, large oak tree and shrubbery along the east, which is that kind of the top. And there's an existing box elder. Oftentimes, I think it looks better having large established trees, even though I would never plant the box elder there or recommend doing it there. But sometimes it can look as if it's not a freshly open site. So there's some value in keeping trees there if it's determined, that the tree has to go. We replant the street tree line along there, along South Street. The resort has sugar maples that line the street, and along Cross Street, they are a red silver maple hybrid, a Fremont maple that goes along those streets. So we kind of replant those street trees and then provide screening to the tavern building with white birch trees. And then next. I won't go too much into this. This just kind of was one of the exhibits of showing the historic structures. I think Scott's going to talk about this a little bit more of how they kind of relate to the area around them. You can go to the next slide. And then it just shows the in-district that the two buildings are in. So the in-district is the entire in-block plus the administration building and homes that are across the street, and the few homes that are right adjacent to Mechanic Street. And the resort property, so to go back to feasibility, other feasibility studies that we look into, as far as moving the homes, have done a couple investigations. The only resort property that we can move it to is located on Maple Street, and reached out to a company to get quotes to move the building there. And they told us it wasn't feasible based on just the distance from it. I forget how far it is, quarter mile, it's not too far, but it crosses electrical lines twice. It crosses 13 house hookups and has significant full-grown trees that go across the road that would prohibit a house being moved down the street. We reached out to a couple neighboring properties that were right adjacent that didn't have any street tree or electrical crossing concerns to see if they were interested in purchasing the building, or even we would split the cost in moving the building to their site, knowing that it could be saved. Did not get any interest there. Had one person who ran through the exercise of walking through the buildings, had a potential site but it was outside of the village and also became unfeasible to move the buildings. From my understanding, and Greg could speak to this, but when talking to Scott, moving structures it is great. It can keep the structures, but it often takes them off as contributing factors to the historic register. The house that we moved is not a contributing structure because of its relocation. The pole barn that got moved and rotated is not a contributing structure because of its relocation. Ideally, a house is moved in a very close context, and so that can still play a part in the existing role that is. And there isn't any feasible spot that would provide itself on resort land. And then notwithstanding that, once it's moved, the same economics of feasibility still come into play of what is an appropriate use for the two structures. Let's see, just want to make sure I'm hitting everything else. I do appreciate, I know everybody showing up and going through the issues of the permit. I'll try to hit on the criteria, criteria 1, and I don't have things memorized, but I know that was like sound and noise and air.
Okay, you've done a very thorough description of what you've done, what you have thought of. Any of the commission members have any questions for him?
No.
Any of the audience members have any questions? The parties? Question. You raised your hand first, man.
Why you initially looked at moving the house to another in location, because like you mentioned, the same issues would still have existed. It seems like there must have been more reasons than just not wanting to deal with the building that you want them moved, if you actually spent time to consider where on in property it could be moved to.
I mean, that's one of the things that Department of Historic Preservation looks at. They want to know, is it feasible to move the buildings? This project kind of gives some context. The thought, I think, with the resort in these two buildings is, as the application describes, keeping the buildings until there is a determined use that can be thought out, or whether there's a justification for demolishing or moving the buildings. And looking at the buildings from a movability standpoint would allow the resort to build on the site. So in 2011 through 17, there was a proposal to build on the site, and the two buildings would not be there. So as part of that process, you're looking at, okay, if it is necessary for the resort to expand, are there measures that we can do to mitigate the loss of the structures? And moving the homes is one of those potential possibilities.
So that was looked at back then?
That was considered back then, yeah. And we looked into it again, just from a feasibility standpoint, to know if the buildings could be moved or not. So again, it's an exercise that is required, but by the Department of Historic Preservation, make sure that you're doing the due diligence, can they be moved? But yeah, to the point, once they're moved to the resort property, we still have the same issue of what is a potential use. So while I would still make that argument, whether there was some other site, did go through the exercise of seeing how you would actually move the homes.
Okay, sir, I think you had your hand up second.
Then can you please restate for everyone how long you advertised and when you advertised for parties interested in the properties?
Yep, we advertised for a month.
You said 3 weeks in an application.
Oh, I believe it was a month. It was, I can look back, but I think it was 4 weeks in the standard, and then the Valley News also, ran it in their
Did they
classifieds.
advertise nationally in Preservation News or other organizations that are preservation minded?
No, no. The advertising was not to move the buildings. It was, or actually, it was to sell the buildings for $1 to anybody who potentially would be interested. We had, I think, 4 people actually reach out. Nothing of any viable options. People
Just
who,
think if you had advertised for a year.
sure, yeah, who knows what would happen in advertised year. Again, I highly think that the feasibility of somebody moving those homes in a close location really doesn't make a difference whether you advertise nationally or locally or at what level. It's got to be somebody who has property very close to the buildings themselves.
Okay, yes, ma'am? Yes, Wendy?
Thank you, Ben. I just wanted to circle back to the use of the word mothballing, which doesn't show up in any of like the mitigation expectations. And, how did you come to choose that word? Or why are you using mothballing?
Yeah, we used it with Department of Historic Preservation. They've used it back with us. Essentially, it's keeping, I understand if there's official definition, Scott, you can help me out, but, keeping the buildings as is until some future use is determined. So, it wasn't called out in the previous permit, that essentially is what it is. Anything else to add, Scott?
I'll get into that a little bit.
Okay, yeah, okay. Keep it on me. That's good. Yep.
Okay, any other questions regarding this presentation? Yes, so, Mr. Pear?
I had a conversation with Laura at the Vermont Division of Historic Preservation. And she said that if the homes were moved to an area that was either within the historic district, existing, or contiguous to it, or possibly that district could be expanded somewhat to include the moved houses, that they would still be considered a contributing resource. Is your understanding different than that?
I guess I'm going off of the 2 structures that we moved were taken off as contributing structures. So, if she's the one who would give that opinion, so I'm not going to contradict Laura.
Greg has his hand raised.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Do you?
Greg is from Historic Preservation. He's
Online. All right, let me put this window and then we'll.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself until you gave me permission, but yeah, that's correct. I mean, when a building is moved, typically it loses its significance. There are situations where if it is moved within the same historic district, it can still be significant even if it's moved, although I would say Ben's understanding is correct that the majority of the time when a building is moved, it loses its historical significance and therefore its contributing status to a historic district. Just a point of clarification I wanted to make.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ben, if you get permission to do this, about how long would this demolition take? And when would you consider starting?
I'm giving ourselves a month, to tear down the 2 buildings, probably could be done within a week. And then it's, breaking up the foundations, resodding it, planting trees. So, 2 weeks, but 4 weeks was my kind of comfort level based on weather, what it would look like. I've had conversation, I've had conversations with neighboring people and left messages. The resort fully acknowledges the impact that demolition will have. And I'll maybe save most of our response when I talk to criteria 1 and 5. But we don't have any date set for when we would take down the buildings. The goal in my mind was really kind of go through the permitting process and find out when we could. From a local permit standpoint, we have 2 years. From Act 250, if we got the permit, I think it's 3 years. I think there's an incentive for us to remove the buildings if they're coming down as soon as we can, in making sure that it is cohesive with neighboring properties, the school, and business levels and population levels of Woodstock and tourism.
Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up, sir?
Yes, I'd like the commissioners to know that there was communication provided to the Historic Preservation Commission from the Attorney General of the state, which included various correspondence between the Woodstock Resort Corporation and the Division of Historic Preservation. Going back as far as 2012, I have here a couple of letters. Thank you for submitting your annual inspection report for the above referenced properties, which are owned and maintained by the inn. We received your report on less than such a date. And then they clearly spell out the committee shall maintain for future use, not for mothballing. Hear that, for future use, the buildings at 16 South and the Beach House. In addition to current maintenance work, the permittee shall A, routinely inspect at least annually the interior, including attics, basements, and exterior of the buildings to identify any deterioration or damage to the structures. Now, we all walked through that house and no one is doing that. And he's admitted they haven't done it for 20 years. B, address and repair in a timely and appropriate manner any deteriorations of damage identified during the routine inspections. C, submit plans for demolition, relocation, or rehabilitation of either building to the division and the commission for review and comment and approval. D, submit a copy of routine inspection report to the division starting May 1st in 2010. The purpose of these annual inspection reports is to ensure that the historic structures on the properties are maintained and kept in good condition so that the rehabilitation and adaptive reuse is feasible in the future. The 2013-14 report states that there is little change in the physical condition of the buildings from last year. So we assume that they are being maintained in anticipating of rehabilitation in the future as the Woodstock Inn and Resort currently is developing plans for future use of these buildings. Question mark, signed Devin Coleman. This is dated May 6th, 2014. There's another letter from 2012. They had to be reminded to submit these reports. And I've seen the reports because the Attorney General's office very tersely sent them to us with no explanation, ending the letter saying this ends this matter, but it doesn't end the matter because they had to be reminded to submit these reports in a nice way from the division. But I just want to make that clear to the commissioners.
Yeah, thank you. We can hear comments from, I believe your name is,
Jenna,
Jenna.
am I allowed
Yes.
to comment?
Friend of the commission, yes.
So this has clearly been a very long process, and the inn has done a lot of legwork and invested a lot of time in really thinking through the options, and I commend you for that. And I think it really just highlights that this is an incredibly complex situation. Both of these buildings have a lot of needs. The inn has a lot of needs. The community has a lot of needs, and I just encourage, the inn moving forward, and depending on the result of this hearing and this permit, PTV works in the realm of really complex projects. We're very familiar with a lot of the partners and the funding sources, and we'd love to be able to engage with the inn and the community to think about these challenging projects in the future. And so we just wanted to provide that comment.
Wendy?
Thank you. I just wanted to expand a notch on those points regarding the expectations that were laid out in the Act 250 permit of 2009, which 19A through D. And that's why I brought up the mothball question, because it's very explicit in A through D, what's expected. And it was disheartening to find that the inn actually did not submit reports annually. They had to be reminded there are still remain years that are missing. And the inspection is very cursory, and they almost match each other from year to year. I did a full summary analysis for our local village development review board hearing, and I will submit that to you after the hearing as a piece of testimony. I'd like to include. I don't have it with me, but I went through those reports in detail to fully understand what had transpired.
Thank you. Okay, do you have anything else, sir, that you haven't hit on? Okay.
I was gonna go start doing the criteria specifically.
Is that
Or-
appropriate? Okay.
Okay, and then,
What I would like to say about the criteria, that we've talked about that many times, and there's a number of them. We'd like to hear one criteria at a time.
Okay.
So that we don't get all mashed up.
Yep.
Put it.
Perfect, so, let's go to our actual application to look at the criteria. So,
Hang on a second.
Yeah,
It's noon.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be a good time to take a short break.
hate to cut your thunder here,
no,
but,
that's quite all right.
but maybe this is an appropriate time.
Yeah.
To take a break. How much time do you think?
We have a lot of ground to cover still, so, but I'm sure people want to stretch their legs,
Yeah,
have a snack, maybe 15 minutes.
15 minutes, does that sound okay with you folks? 15 minutes. So, that puts us back here, about 20 after 12.
I'm good.
Anyone else have any questions? Yep, we'll be back here at that point.
No, I don't think so. Can I?
It's in the notice. You know how to find the notice.
I bug one of you to tell me where I find the link, because I'm gonna go online to try to stay. That'd be fun.
So, the easiest way.
That's, you need to have the team link.
I'm gonna leave and I might come back, but I'm gonna try to go on there just so I don't try to get all coverage. I got one more. What's the website?
In here, the security.
Yeah, but I
Done
read,
that.
okay, earlier we got.
Click on it, right there. It's obviously a much longer. That's how I was.
Okay, that's perfect.
So then
Yeah.
here's the project number.
Okay.
You enter 3W0568.
Hey, but you want,
All series for the Woodstock Inn, you can just add in this particular application.
Okay.
Then it's a third way.
Okay.
Still.
Got it.
Third. And then when you come down here, you can change. There's been discussion about the 2009 permit. It has that condition 19 that they're talking about. There you can find it under the condition 3. There's some other permits here. Go back to the 8. This one in particular.
Okay.
Click on it.
Do you click on that blue button?
You did, you can click either, you can click on the view or you can click on the actual.
Okay, the top one, got it.
On this,
Yeah.
or this, doesn't matter.
Okay.
So here it is, and then you can not sorted. You can- These are all of their exhibits. This is their-
Could have an
their
example.
full application. So everything that they submitted will be on here. Bottom, you see a district submission document.
Yes, sir. And then where do I find the Zoom link? Is it in here too?
What do you mean for Zoom?
Like the team?
I'm asking you a question. Oh, you want to leave your question at home?
Yeah.
Okay, so back in the major notice, you can see right here.
As long as you have.
Okay, so I do everything I did and it's at the bottom
Yep.
and it's called major
Period of
notice.
time this afternoon that you might have to.
Okay.
Reconvene at another time, but that all depends on what goes on.
And then just click.
And then the link is there.
To discuss and that was right now. But
Okay, this is what you do.
So
You Google, and you want to Google Act 250 database. I mean, it's so messy.
No, it's okay. And I'll still write it out. Okay. So you go Act 250 database.
Yeah, and then you put in the project number, which is, you'll have in your picture, and then you just push search at the bottom, and then you click on the button that says view, which is next to the project number. When you find it, and then you scroll to the bottom after you get there, and then there's going to be a list of other things, and there's there's little view buttons next to each one. At the very bottom, the second to the bottom was something called major notice. And when you click on that, it brings you to another page, and the link's inside that page.
Okay, perfect. I'm gonna just search.
And also, everything you want to see relating to this is in
in
there,
there.
every document and everything.
Thank you so
That
much.
was awesome. Okay.
Do you want me to show you what I just showed?
Yeah, could you? I'm just trying
Or
to.
I can, you're gonna, this is the computer you're gonna use to point.
It is, yeah.
This
Okay.
is being recorded now.
So if I can.
And this will go up on YouTube, Act 250 website that you can view.
So you're on.
Yeah, you can find
it.
That's what this camera's doing right now.
Sort by-
You can hop on.
Oh, I think
So it's in the hearing notice.
I
Did you get that?
This is the kind of told you.
Okay, so it's also the database.
So then I
You
can
go
get
to the
it.
Act 250
I
database.
assume so.
Act 250 database.
Can you make sure about
It would be on the database and then application.
And this is. And this is.
You're gonna join now.
Well, you can search, probably this number is
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I don't know. Good.
3W0.
Okay. I'm not positive.
Yeah.
Maybe it's.
But if this is the right place, then I'll just go home and.
Join now, and then I'll see you.
What are you reading?
Checking.
Oh,
So
she
we'll
had
be
his own
there.
opinion? I didn't
Okay,
know.
awesome. My name's Emma.
That's what did it.
Six.
Oh, yeah, do you want, or four, do you want mine, just in case?
he was strong. He changes.
And that brings you up to menu. And the town of Woodstock. Should
You
bring you
can
right.
text me or call me. I have my phone on vibrate.
It was some kind of like a podcast that he and his wife did. About where they live and they impact it.
Well, you needed the link.
They
You
were
needed
showing it was very
the
interesting.
team, the team.
It's been a little bit longer.
On this, on this.
So
Okay, great,
personal.
thank you. And I'll just let you know if I get it.
Yeah.
So it's called major notice.
Okay, I really appreciate
And
it.
you click on the database and you'll get a link. And you click on the link.
From there, where?
Yeah.
No, I know.
Very good.
What's that?
Yeah, you're doing great. We're talking about a previous,
Here, you were in the database.
yeah, Tim Taylor.
Oh.
No, and he had it for a few years after Bush ride.
No.
And then we went rudderless until we discovered how good you're gonna be.
No. Kevin was,
Whatever,
I'm sure was.
whatever device you're
Did you have
using,
any
this
good
phone or
Kevin?
if you are on your
Yes.
computer.
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah,
click
he
on
did.
I'm sure he did a great.
Yep, he was very good, but his, and he would be here yet, probably
Right.
except his job.
Yeah.
And he went to DuBois and King way back when.
Did he?
Well,
Many
no.
civil engineers did.
You're getting
Not
in
when
there.
I was there,
As long
but
as you
yeah.
give me your address.
Yeah, he's a good man.
Oh, you're already on it, yeah.
Yeah, he is. He's way fun.
So we'll just,
Want a peanut butter cracker, or is it gonna kill anybody?
You want some of your fudge now?
my husband.
I'm all set, I got it.
You want a peanut butter cracker?
I'm all set, thank you. Look at you, you're all.
I'm sorry, I'm
You are
no,
smart.
no Linda.
Are you eating a peanut butter sandwich?
I am.
You're trying to kill people too,
I am.
just like me.
Okay.
I thought of her when I packed up that little thing down the end of the table. And I didn't know Gina, there's fudge in there. I didn't know Gina was, yeah, Gina was
Not your
gonna,
container?
huh?
Not you container?
This lady is so thoughtful.
It's mine, yeah.
Oh my.
Well, he got squash soup last week. You guys are just gonna have fun.
Yes.
Josh,
Geiger
from
Beansbridge Road.
Nelson.
Yes. I'm good. How are you? I've been living over here for the last 2 years.
Oh,
so-
yeah.
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 How are we doing?
No, I left.
It's for sale?
Yeah, yeah, we're
So
trying
we're
to
doing
sell
great.
it.
As far as you're concerned.
I wish we were recording.
Yeah.
So.
I'm not talking about being sensitive, right?
Work up.
Make a chit chat.
Yeah, I work at the resort in. Yeah, I'm the director of human resources. Yeah. Yeah, I left Killing County. What? Yes. Yeah, you mean,
I made
good
it.
job, good place to live.
My mouth is gonna be full shut.
Yeah.
If you get that straightened out, what if I eat it all right now? Oh.
That was on the move. He's doing well.
Good.
His father.
That's all yours.
We're.
I didn't know she would say hi.
Other-
Thank you.
I came a little late. Can I sign in still?
I think that would be greatly appreciated. I think that this, let me see what one I can grab. And
Not
you
here.
need a pen?
But
Yeah.
are you gonna?
Okay.
And are you the chair? You're the chair.
Yes, I do.
When the people, I was sitting in the back and rolled back the boat. Could you tell them
No, no one-
to either stand
Gina
up
lives
or
in Newport.
speak up?
I'm not bringing it.
Because we could, I mean, we.
Well, I could understand. That's why I had them move the table over here so they would be addressing the room instead of just addressing us.
Yeah.
But I can mention
Yeah,
that.
just
for
to
sure.
speak up because
You're,
someone else said, did you hear anything? I know I've heard it before.
no, I can certainly, when we get started again, I can, everybody get settled in. I can mention that.
She's one of us. She's one of us.
And the people that are commenting, maybe ask them to stand up in the audience.
Bennington County.
Hopefully we can get them.
I'm sure that would be helpful.
Yeah. Why not much?
All right. I think,
Thank you.
We have one more lady that came in late, so I gave her one of
Oh,
the
thank you.
sheets
Thank you very
to,
much.
to sign in.
And when we restart, remind me and I'll see if anyone else came in.
Maybe I should make a list.
Oh,
very untidy when I get my email. I can never fit it in the email slot that they give you for anything.
Want to compare. There you go. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for signing in.
Houses, that's it. You know, we just been talking about 6 months. This. But you know, not very close. But back then, yes, it seemed to be on the market for at least. Yeah, the whole process.
Yeah, I was gonna give it anyway, so we got a break. I might as well do it.
Might as well sweeten us up a little bit.
That's the news story.
That's to go home to the Costco plan.
It's gonna be on the passenger seat.
Were you gonna eat it on the way?
Yeah.
You, Really? Would you eat one piece and it tastes like another?
Oh yeah.
I think the inn could have made some points and could have catered.
Oh, you mean the coffee and donuts scenario? That's considered quid pro quo or blackmail.
It isn't really.
But this
We
was,
like to
that's
avoid all.
their, yeah, their Christmas present.
Wow. Suzanne, that's great.
Did you try it?
Oh, yeah.
So we've been on a panel for a long time.
I recognize you too. Not as long as the gentleman down the end that brought the flag.
See, here also.
He precedes me.
So you were here for the spa hearing also?
Commercial business.
She was too.
Both of their names are on that.
I remember the name.
Yeah, both of their names are on that,
I remember that hearing well.
That was.
Oh, yeah.
It was here,
Yeah.
facing the way. Yeah, people were jumping up and down about a wall and what they could see, what they couldn't see, what they didn't want to see. Interesting. It's historic.
That was hard for me because I felt like I was really alone. I don't like, we didn't really have people supporting. And Linda Madison. In order to get a hearing, somebody had to. Nobody else was. It was kind of like, it has to be the bad guy.
No, it's not the bad guy.
Oh, I know, but that's the way, that's the way a lot of people in the community.
Yeah. People have, people feel that contrarian. That's such a big thing.
Like you said, I was praying already.
Yes.
Overcome objections.
How would you rate it?
They're
Ultimately on that.
in your notes.
That's right. And then they went and got a, they went and got the architect from.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Cell phone. Do their development.
Call it the registration.
Yeah, this is hearing my message.
Yeah, this is.
Just to give you a heads up about the arguments.
It'd be nice to get look at it.
The people presented their.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Right. Oh, they can. Those are just, that's just what I thought.
Okay.
I was just, I don't, me guessing. Just me guessing what's gonna come up tomorrow or whenever. They're burdened, so they should go first.
Right, and take it.
There's gonna be overlap. They were asking me about that.
Wasn't
Right.
I'll try to just take one criteria, move on to the next one, and always go back. But it just makes it, that's one way to organize things. And it helps keep it from being just items that we'll take any argument from anybody at any time.
She had the idea of circulating.
The little structure is good. Really good pizza.
Okay. You got,
give a certain number of time, decided.
I will see, maybe Stephanie would be better at to,
I mean, not technology, but just procedure.
she would be a person that could.
So in my, thank you for giving me party status. I said section B. Criterion, yeah.
Criterion.
But one of my comments that's all in writing actually has to do with the noise. So I wrote down aesthetics. Would I be allowed to speak on the criteria?
Didn't you ask for noise? Didn't you ask for criteria 8, including both historic
And
and aesthetics?
Yes.
Noise can be
So
taken
I'm
out
covered.
under 8.
Okay, that's my question. 'Cause
Yeah.
And we're not gonna leave anybody really high and dry at the end, maybe if there's anything
Any additional.
else that is not.
Right,
Yeah,
Thing that
aesthetics may include lighting, sign,
right,
building.
right.
like,
Okay,
like,
okay. Because, yeah, that's great, because I have, wait, and I thought, I was like, wait, did I put it in the wrong category?
You'll be okay. You could just say in the beginning that
Yeah.
I want my
I want
Yeah.
the aesthetic conversational.
Okay.
Great.
All set to go? Oh, they kind of, yeah, thank you.
No, if I ate this, I'd
I
smoke out, I think.
I had two
You get a sugar high and a sugar low.
Here comes Stan.
Yeah. Take some more.
What's that?
No, sir.
Thank you.
So Cheryl,
Yes,
somebody left and they've joined online, just to let you know.
okay,
So I'll keep an eye on when someone's raising a hand. But so we have an additional participant online.
okay,
She was sitting right here. I
okay,
don't think so. There's gonna be another one too, the one
okay.
Alicia, I think. And she also left and she's gonna try to join online. So just so you know, there's a little bit of,
Pete and I just talked about to make sure that we got everybody on the sign-up sheet, because some people didn't walk in. We tried to catch those.
oh,
but
great.
at the beginning, when we start again, we'll ask that, and we'll mention that some people may have some issues from online.
Or just like maybe they're not additional, but they've changed how they're participating. Yeah.
Okay. And one lady asked me if we could ask people to stand when they comment, because it's the sound and the noise is not getting to the back of the room.
Oh, okay.
People have been very polite, but, and just to speak up, And, we talked about handling as much as we can the criteria one at a time. We talked before, so we're gonna talk about, know that there's gonna be some overlap. And I think, I'm sure it's a great way to help people retain it and to focus in on that.
When Pete comes back, I'll make one other suggestion, but I'll wait till he comes back.
Okay.
You spoke here. Criteria to stay on. It's already been set up.
They do cross over, but still, I think we can.
You'll be all right. Grab Suzanne too.
Okay.
And it hasn't changed.
I'll be, watch it. Okay. Let's get Pete. I think they want to come in. I think we want to just do a little summary.
Okay.
I'm just gonna make a quick, I'll be right out. Hey, we're gonna get ready in at least a couple minutes, so if you wanna take your seats.
Question.
I was just embarrassed. Yeah. They'll give us some work, but I can tell you, this washer.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I gotta bring it. Scott. Ready?
Okay, so
Started?
anybody who didn't sign in? Anyone who didn't sign in? All right. Does anyone have any questions for me before we start?
Good. No. Well, I asked. Wow.
To me, a lot of these older people didn't have anything to do with it.
A couple of them. I was watching to see if.
Okay, let's get started, please.
If anybody's gonna fall asleep, but they didn't. They were pretty good.
He was pretty long.
He was.
Yeah. I know.
He didn't look anything from a lawyer.
Thank you, folks.
Or maybe they left.
Okay, we're going to begin again. And during the recess, we had the opportunity to just kind of talk to a couple people too. We do need to make sure that everyone has signed in the sign-up sheets. We tried to catch everyone, but we did get a person during the recess, during the break here, which is nice. Also, we got a request that we have the presenters talking from this angle, which seems to be satisfactory, but anyone speaking from the floor, if you would stand up so your voice projects best, that would be very helpful. And also, we were talking, and it seems that you folks have talked a lot about criteria number 8. Do you folks have any objection with starting as the first criteria that we discussed, because that seems to be the most interest? That's great, thank you. Okay, we'll go back to it here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, criterion 8, going through that, scenic beauty, historic sites and natural areas. I'll call up, Scott. When
he comes back.
So outside, but to go through our criterion 8, worked with Scott quite a bit on coming up with a historic preservation plan. And,
excuse me, could you explain what Scott's input?
Scott is our
position?
Yeah, Scott is a consultant, a historic preservation consultant. He has his own company, 106 Associates.
Do you want me to go grab people outside? Would that be
Yeah.
helpful?
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll maybe wait to start until
Yeah.
they come in. Is that okay? Okay.
Seems to be a good idea.
Hopefully they didn't go to the inn for lunch or something.
Yep.
Here we go.
Nice to comment on what we do. Everybody. We want to be able to. Yep, just one. How did you do?
Nobody's out. I saw one person walk into the bathroom and nobody's in the front.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Perfect. So, I'll introduce Scott Newman. He is a historic preservationist, of 106 Associates. Been working with Scott for about over a year now, on, the analysis of the buildings, the kind of history of the buildings, alternative uses, and criterion 8, which goes through, aesthetics, and historic sites and natural areas. I believe many of the specific points seem not necessarily to apply since we are not constructing anything. So, the proposed architectural style, we're not proposing anything. I will point out number C, it says, will the project generate any significant noise during and after construction? Just because it was raised up early about construction noise. which I think is in 5 as well. So just to reiterate, construction, for the most part, most of it, the intense part of it will be about 2 weeks long. We're giving 4 weeks for the entire project to do the final landscaping, grading, planting trees and whatnot. We have submitted a construction waste document and worked with the Agency of Natural Resources to make sure that we are doing things by their standards. The noise specifically will be, very concentrated, and we are limiting our construction time between 9 and 5, so it's not to cause a disturbance out of doors. If you're indoors, even on adjacent sites, I don't think there's going to be much impact at all. I will just say, Bob and I met maybe a month or so ago, and just really appreciate the connection of knowing people specifically, because if anybody has any issues with the resort, and I was very forthcoming with Bob, a person to call now if there's any issues that are going on with the resort, and I can help address those issues. And the same with noise. We're going to be very aware of the impact that this process would have on people. Are only interested in making sure that we're going forward with the plan that does not adversely affect anybody during that process. The aesthetics also kind of talks about other criteria which mainly apply to kind of building the projects, but I'll kind of talk through just the transition from the buildings. Again, the buildings are, I kind of refer to it, the buildings aren't like your 2 front teeth. If you remove the 2 buildings, it's not going to feel like there's a gaping hole in the constructed landscape. The school is set back across the street quite far. The site adjacent to it is an open lot. They're adjacent on a corner lot, so there isn't a visual interruption to a rhythm that is destroyed by the 2 buildings being removed. So the proposal to put them into green space, the idea is really to kind of be responsible with screening the tavern, because the tavern does have a large scale. It's a 2-story plus a 3rd-story roof. So really the landscape plan is about providing that screening to that building. It's about putting along street trees so that already existing street narrative is continued along Court Street and South Street. And as a corner lot, again, the feeling across the street is kind of open lawns. The school is kind of an open area set. So making it feel like a park that has existed there for a while also kind of transitioning from the tavern down to the empty green space is kind of really what our landscape plan is looking to accomplish. The other information in criterion 8, I think it might be worth calling up you, Scott, at this time. We have worked with Department of Historic Preservation very early on and finding out what the best way to mitigate the potential loss of the buildings. And so we've had conversations with DHP. They have submitted a comment letter, which you probably haven't fully digested yet, that came in and states, kind of restates the mitigation proposals that we kind of worked through. And there's essentially 4 components to that mitigation strategy. There is a historic marker that we'll be putting on the front of the inn to tell about its significance in the community. We are looking at developing, they're called VARIES and DOEs, no acronyms, but of the 2 structures so that they're photographed and analyzed before any deconstruction occurs. There is a plan to do that same analysis with the remaining structures that the resort owns that haven't been a part of the historic village. So they're mostly properties that are outside of that historic district. And I think we had 10 or 12 structures that potentially could qualify as historic structures, Department of Historic Preservation. So we're going to develop, or we'll be developing a plan to get all of those assessed. And then the last one is updating the designation of Woodstock Village as a National Historic Place. I think the last time that was done was 22. Last time I said it, you corrected me. It was
2021.
2021. 2021. So it would update it and take into account any changes that have happened since 2021. But maybe Scott, if you want to,
Ben,
yeah.
One question I just want to confirm that you mentioned earlier back on aesthetics about the green space and that it buffers the tavern addition. I just want to make it clear for the commission, and you said this earlier, but just to put a finer point on it, that you're reserving that space for a future potential expansion. For example, I wouldn't want the commission to put on some sort of a condition that would limit your ability to expand at that space. You want to just,
yeah, correct. I mean, it's an acknowledgement that the land there has significant value for the resort to be able to continue to evolve in the future. And, you know, I think we can look at the needs of the resort, and I can list several needs right now that would potentially have a viable use to having additional space, more guest rooms, a small fitness area so people who are coming to the resort don't have to travel down the athletic club. We're looking at potentially expanding wellness activities and programming on site. None of those have an actual plan or proposed project for because we're putting our priorities into other essentially maintenance items. The last time we renovated our guest rooms was in 2017. Just as a point, we took out a loan in 2017 and sold assets in 2017 to pay for the project, and we're still paying off that loan until 2029. And so really we're looking at investing in the property to improve our infrastructure. The tavern wing next door, we just got out of a multi-million-dollar project to replace the roof and put a new sprinkler system in and upgrade the heating and venting and cooling of that structure. So there's a lot of investments that's needed, but acknowledging that, you know, there are inflection points where the resort has to remain relevant for the future success of the business. And a lot of people kind of pointed out the importance of the sustainability of Woodstock and tying it to those historic structures. And it's equally as important that we allow smart and prudent growth to the businesses in Woodstock so that they can remain viable. So yeah, very critical that that land would be retained in a way that could evolve for future expansion of the resort.
You got some questions, but I think that I still think.
Did you want to?
Scott to talk.
Yeah, if I could
About this
turn it over
criteria?
to Scott, and maybe we can get the questions on historic preservation aesthetics a little bit more with Scott. Again, completely acknowledge if you were part of the local zoning process, I handled everything myself because I felt like I could, you know, present and had the backup. But with this level of meeting, really appreciate Scott joining us in person. He developed a report that was sent to just Department of Historic Preservation, had conversations with Greg and Laura at the Department of Historic Preservation, and kind of worked through the process to make sure that all the due diligence was done. So Scott, maybe if you want to kind of go through historic preservation, he does have a presentation.
Mind if I sit? I don't have Ben's eyesight to see from here to there.
Is it 31?
Yeah, I think so.
If you could present the PowerPoint, does that make that bigger?
Probably, but I can't see from here. Like I mean, if you want to point out which.
Otherwise, it would take up the whole screen.
And just a second, let me make sure I'm sharing that.
I would make you move it back to your screen,
And then
click
share
on
it.
it, and then put it back
That's a
up.
good idea.
So,
I can get started while you're working on that.
It should only take a second. So I don't use, we do everything in PDFs generally when they're exhibit.
Oh, yeah.
oh, I got PDF.
Here you go.
Is that?
Yep.
Okay. But now I can't do this. I can't see.
You just hit the right or the down arrow, that'll advance the slide.
I know, but I also have to see the Teams chat because
Oh.
I need to see if somebody, so I can't take up my whole
Try doing
screen.
that and then dragging it over.
Talking about the teams, Stephanie told me that some people have joined on the teams site, that people that were here, that they've gone and
Oh, they've rejoined.
they've rejoined over there.
Interesting.
Hold on a second. I have to share it first. Let me just make sure I'm sharing it.
That's right. However works best for you.
So I want to make sure that the people who are online can see. And now. I'm almost there, I promise. That's what you want, right? That's bigger, okay.
It's a little bit text heavy, so the bigger. I just want to. Yeah, well, good morning. That's what I was going to say. I'll say good afternoon. Instead, my name's Scott Newman. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and help with the review of the South Street project. My summary bio is on the screen up there, and an independent company located in Burlington, Vermont. The CFR 61 qualified architectural historian, and I have 30 years professional experience doing this in Vermont. Master's degree in historic preservation and a Bachelor of Arts in economics. Included in the Vermont Division for Historic Preservation's list of accredited and approved consultants. 15 years as historic preservation officer for the Agency of Transportation, where I managed review of over 2,200 projects for state and federal regulations. 15 years as a consulting for private, institutional, and governmental clients. And my service typically include individual and district national register nominations. I recently completed the Waterbury Village National Register listing. Regulatory reviews under 22 VSA 14, which is state law, section 106, the federal law, and Act 250 criterion 8. Also do historic tax credits, condition assessments, and historic survey. And I lectured on historic preservation practice at the UVM graduate program. With that in mind, my job for this project was to review the proposed removal of 14 and 16 South Street under Act 250 criterion 8. My intention with this presentation is just to summarize my report, each section of the report that I submitted to the State Historic Preservation Office, which I assume you all have a copy of. Honestly, these types of projects bring me no joy, where they involve demolition, as Ben was saying. And before I signed on, I had a very close look at the circumstances surrounding this project, and what I found was that they were quite unique and unusual in that these buildings have been vacant for 20 years, with repeated and, in my view, good faith attempts by the inn to reuse them over that time. Also, their location is somewhat unique and sort of the last piece of this trapezoidal shape controlled by and occupied by the inn these two buildings are just sort of the last outlying pieces in there. And I don't think anybody can argue that it's not a very logical place to expand the inn if that's what they had to do. Slide, please. Just discuss the properties involved in the broader historical context. The district shown here was listed initially in 1973 and was updated in 2021. Just heard from the audience. It's 408 acres. It contains 550 buildings. 462 of them are considered historic and 88 are considered non-historic. It also includes 11 structures, 6 sites, and 8 objects that were surveyed. 14 and 16 South Street are at the tip of the arrow. You can see there, sort of towards the lower right. As you see in the map, the district generally aligns along the east and west sides of the Ottaquechee River and bordering parallel streets Prospect, College Hill, Church, The Green, Central, and Pleasant, as well as intersecting streets extending westerly, southwesterly generally, including a Lincoln High Golf Course south of Minden Hill. As the district listing states, the development of Woodstock Village over 200 years from its initial European settlement in the mid-18th century through its growth as a year-round tourist destination in the mid-20th century is clearly expressed on the landscape in the district's collection of popular New England house forms and architectural styles. Slide, please. Here's a tighter view of the district, excerpt, if you will. And the line, not quite trapezoidal, but is close there, defines the core property of the Woodstock Inn. And you can see where 14 and 16 are located right there. The white numbers with black backgrounds indicate historic properties. Black numbers with white backgrounds indicate non-historic or non-contributing properties, as Ben was calling them. So how is this building immediately bordered? I don't want to go into where I see that Ben's done a fantastic job. I'm going to try to lighten that analysis up a little bit in the interest of time. But across the street from 14 and 16 is the modern Woodstock School, as we saw this morning, not considered a historic property. Northwest of the buildings is the 1990s Tavern wing of the Woodstock Inn, also not a historic building. Northeast of the buildings is an open parcel. And then the Paul Barn, which was moved there as part of a recent project. I believe that's 395 one. That's also not a historic building. And then southeast of the buildings is Cross Street, as you can see there. Slide, please. Here are the two buildings we saw this morning. 14 South Street, at the left is a 20th century house. Although there was some discussion this morning among some local experts that it perhaps was built a little earlier, perhaps in the 1890s. 16 South Street to the right is a 19th century building, the front block of which was built circa 1840. Again, we heard this morning that might be as early as 1832, with later additions to the rear. Both buildings were constructed as residences. Both possess sufficient historical integrity to be listed as contributing part of the historic district. Neither, in my view, possess any unique, rare, or highly decorative features that would characterize them as outstanding examples of their styles. Slide, please. Just a Google aerial image showing that for the core Woodstock Inn property, and again, 14 and 16, you see 14 noted there, with Cross Street to the right. So just some of the sort of bigger picture issues with respect to criterion 8. Again, this is sort of backgrounding the test for the Middlebury evaluation, which we'll see later. As Ben Pauley detailed, both properties have been vacant for over 20 years, and despite multiple good faith investigations, I've not realized any reasonable plans financially that would make economic sense for the inn's business. Part of the investigations into reuse included hiring highly qualified professionals, including an architect, structural engineer, examine conditions and generate estimated costs to meet contemporary building code and acceptable levels of condition and convenience. As you've heard, 20+ years of vacancy and freeze-thaw cycles have taken their toll on the buildings, and the cost to rehabilitate are estimated around $700 per square foot. Even if rehabilitation made financial sense, the inn has concluded, based on repeated investigations, that it has no prudent and feasible use for the buildings in their current configuration. And modifying or connecting them to hold a future expansion would further add to the expense and destroy the historic character of these buildings, which would defeat the entire purpose. Regarding selling the buildings, I became aware of two substantial problems. The first is a practical limitation that they both back closely onto the inn's event courtyard where weddings and other events are held, which are critical to the inn's bottom line. Rightfully, the inn feels the need to maintain control of that site to ensure the viability of the event space. The second issue is the land under these two vacant buildings makes the most sense for future expansion of the inn's operations, keeping in mind that the amenities provided by the inn are what keep it competitive for the inn's management. Slide, please. With the foregoing information as background, I undertook a standard analysis in my review for BDHP, which the commission members had. In other words, I ran this project through the same process I use for any Act 250 Criterion 8 evaluation. The first part is simple. In this case, do we have historic properties involved? Yes, we do. The removal of which would create an adverse effect to those two historic properties. From there, the question is whether the adverse effect is undue or not undue. Part of evaluating that is to understand whether there are any prudent and feasible alternatives to demolition. And in my report, I looked at 3 possible alternatives, all of which have been discussed. So I'll try and keep this brief. They include mothballing, rehabilitation, and relocation. And those are standard alternatives that we would look at when considering the removal of a historic building. Slide, please. I know folks were asking about a definition of mothballing, and I don't know if there's one specific definition of art, but this is as good as you can find anywhere. It's intended to protect it from deterioration, potential loss while plans are developed to secure its future. This temporary measure helps prevent damage from weather, pests, and vandalism, ensuring the building remains in a preservable state for potential restoration, rehabilitation, and reuse. So mothballing doesn't mean that you're preserving a building in good condition. It means you're generally preserving the building that you were handed while ensuring that it doesn't get any worse and that the weather envelope is protected. The key is to keep, as best you can, to keep water out of the building and to keep the building from collapsing by ensuring the structure is at least viable, even if it doesn't meet code. Slide, please. The second thing we looked at was rehabilitating. So here you'll see just a recap of what Ben had already talked about, and I don't think this is comprehensive. The lists of some of the investigations that the inn made to adaptively reuse these buildings. The 1990s for guest rooms, again in 2001 for guest rooms, 2008 for spa conversion, 2010 for guest rooms, 2018, 19 for guest rooms and amenity space, and at that point the inn commissioned architectural and engineering evaluations. At the end of that process, right up until today, the inn has not identified any use for these buildings that is considered economically responsible or prudent or feasible. There are estimates in that Ben discussed earlier. They're at the bottom there. 14 South Street estimate was $2,795,000. And please keep in mind that's for residential code, and hazardous materials are not included. If you were to rehabilitate these buildings for commercial code, the standards are considerably higher. That would add to the expense, and that number will surely go up because of the presence of lead, mold, and asbestos in the buildings. Number 16 South Street is 3,224,000, with the same caveat that that's for residential code and does not include hazardous materials. I think Ben characterized, I think rightly, or no, this is, I guess, the opinion of the management that those numbers, they don't pencil out in terms of being able to realize any gain from those rehabilitation of those properties. Slide, please. Actually, I want to just take a quick sidebar here, because there has been discussion a couple of times about whether the condition of these buildings is, the present condition is the reason for their demolition. And has there been any sort of intentional or unintentional or neglect by the inn in deferring maintenance that resulted in the justification for demolition? I've looked at that carefully and I've thought about it, and that's not what's going on here at all. I do understand the instinct to look at it, because in my 15 years at the state, I was very vigilant of the fact that some communities would let their resources intentionally degrade so that the state would step in and build them a new bridge, new covered bridge, or a new roadway. So I have that very much in my mind, and I'm used to dealing with that. But that's not what's happening here at all. And I don't think that granting a permit to remove these buildings would set any precedent, unfortunate precedent for future projects. First, the condition of the buildings is only part of the justification for the removal. And the poor conditions that you saw today have little to do with maintenance. I mean, as we walked through, we saw the plaster falling off and the floors sinking, and you know, they're dirty. Those floors were sinking long before those buildings were vacated in early 2000. There is no viable reason to replace plaster or paint a building that's non-heated and vacant. That makes no sense, because chances are over the next few years, that plaster is going to crack and freeze off anyway. There's no reason to fix a sloping floor. All of these things really have nothing to do with maintenance. And there's really nothing to gain by making these kind of incremental small improvements in the building as part of the mothballing process. For example, the fact that mechanical systems are obsolete and need to be completely replaced have nothing to do with deferred maintenance. Nor does the elevation of the buildings vis-a-vis the floodplain. Nor does the fact the slate roofs are at the end of their service lives. Nor does the presence of hazardous materials, including mold, lead, and asbestos, have anything to do with maintenance. Nor does the requirements for structural upgrades to meet code, because the buildings were underbuilt originally, and the codes have been getting tougher and tougher as the years have passed. Nor do the effects of 20 years of freeze-thaw cycles have anything to do with maintenance, nor does the failure of the brick foundation. You generally don't maintain foundations. They fail, and then you repair them. And the foundation in number 14 is approaching failure. And I think that's why the structural engineer has advised, I believe, that it needed to be replaced. So mothballing the buildings is a good faith effort to maintain the building's weather envelope, not make all these changes I've been talking about. And I think that the inn has done a pretty good job overall. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but in my experience, and I've seen a lot of mothball buildings, these buildings are in what I consider average shape for a building that's been vacant mothball for 20 years. I think I'm on the slide now. I want to look at a little more about the rehabilitation option. Again, that's one of the alternatives to demolition. Again, I'm repeating here, but I want you to please sort of bear with me, because all of this information is important with evaluating a project under criteria, all of these circumstances. So I include the engineering, the architecture, the location, all of it. So that's why I'm giving a summary of my report. Ben talked about selling the properties, and in my report, it says that selling the properties would conflict with managing key existing amenities. Abutting the courtyard event space should be managed and enhanced. Events held there draw dollars spent in the historic village, meals, rooms, services, shopping, increasing long-term sustainability to the historic village buildings through increased revenue and the multiplier effect. In other words, that dollar that's spent at the inn and then again in local services keeps getting spent again and again and again in the village and helps keep the village and all the historic buildings you value vibrant and in good condition. Number two, the logical site to expand and provide additional amenities to remain profitable. Woodstock Inn is the village's largest employer and buys local services from carpenters, electricians, plumbers, snowplow operators, landscapers, cleaning, and a wide range of professional services. This investment in the local economy helps keep the historic village vibrant and the historic buildings maintained. And just before I forget, Jenna Lapachinsky is here from PTV. I used to work for PTV, and I had a couple of years, very proud to say I worked for Paul Broom. And one thing Paul Broom was adamant about was a hotel in your historic downtown. He said it over and over and over. And that's why a lot of communities, for example, Winooski, are trying to build more hotel accommodations, because it's the hotel and the viability of the hotels that draw people into these historic communities and allow this investment in the multiplier effect, creating all these jobs. I think Ben said all this, 35,000 guests a year, largest single contributor to the 1% rooms and meals, 300 to 500 employees depending on the season, and the largest supplier of workforce housing. Next slide, please. It is true that the removal, somebody asked a question. It's true that the removal of 14 and 16 South Street will create an adverse effect on historic sites. Those are two listed buildings. They'll be removed. That is an adverse effect. But what I consider to be mitigating considerations is, first, I think Ben put it well when he said, the removal of these buildings isn't knocking out your two front teeth. It's taking the two out at the side. In other words, it's not creating a prominent void in a historic district streetscape. This property is sited to face the modern Woodstock School to the southwest and the modern tavern wing to the northeast, which already interrupt the continuity of the corridor streetscape with modern architecture. Buildings at the end of the line, which I was just talking about, will not create a void between historic buildings. Furthermore, new construction on this site must be reviewed for Act 250, and the Inn is committed to expanding into these parcels when that time comes with sympathetic and compatible transitional architecture, limiting effects to the historic village. Perimeter landscaping will be designed and installed to help maintain continuity of the streetscape immediately after removal. And after 20 years and multiple studies, the determination has been made by the Inn that there is no feasible and prudent use of the buildings. Maintaining the vacant buildings indefinitely is draining resources from its other historic properties. Selling the buildings threatens the viability of the events courtyard, and their indefinite presence prevents needed expansion of the most logical parcel to remain competitive. I have a relocation slide here. Don't think I need to talk about it other than to add one thing. And that Messier Moving was on site here, professional house movers of some repute in the state of Vermont. And they kind of walked away from the project, saying far too many encumbrances, including trees, low wires, to consider moving these buildings. Subsequent to that, there were 4 inquiries. None of those panned out. We didn't think that they would. But the buildings were advertised for $1 for a month. And somebody asked about what's the time frame for advertising, and a month is standard practice for historic resources per the Division for Historic Preservation in at least 2 publications. You know, one micro publication, and then preferably one sort of broader publication. And really, those only per standard practice have to go in on the Saturdays in that month. And I think this was done more often than that. Also, the ad mentioned that there'd be some financial assistance for anybody who had a viable project. And those costs could have been up to the cost of demolition of the buildings. Despite that, there were no takers and no viable projects. Next slide, please. Let's talk about mitigation for a moment.
Good question before we move on to mitigation related to the previous.
Yes.
Okay. So curious, when the tavern addition was constructed in the 90s, what was on that site before that addition was constructed?
I think the majority of it was a parking lot, and I think at least one other house was on that site.
So the next part of the evaluation is to determine, what could mitigate for this loss. Keeping in mind that in order for this project not to be undue, the adverse effect not to be undue and have the commission deny it, the mitigation needs to be adequate. And it definitely needs the concurrence by the Division for Historic Preservation. Mitigation, again, is to define it, a set of actions taken to offset or compensate for the adverse effects of demolition, altering or otherwise harming historic resources when that loss cannot be avoided. 106 Associates drafted a mitigation plan to compensate for the adverse effect. That plan was presented to the State Historic Preservation Office along with the full project review that the Commission has. Agreement on mitigation was reached with the SHPO and includes the following components. The first is a complete, I have to correct you a little bit. For 14 and 16, we do historic resource documentation packages. That's a deep, from a comprehensive analysis of those projects, their history, their significance, contribution to the community, architectural styles, etc. And a copy of that would be made available to the state and to local entities in Woodstock that have interest in historic preservation. Number two, complete determinations of eligibility and Vermont architectural resource inventory documentation packages for every inn-owned building in Woodstock outside the boundaries of the historic district. And the reason for limiting that to the outside the historic district is all the ones inside the historic district are already surveyed, many of them listed. We would obtain written concurrence from the SHPO for that documentation, share the final product, as I had just mentioned. Number four, we update the Woodstock National Register Historic District under National Park Service guidelines. And number five, install a custom roadside historic marker. I'm sure many of you have seen them around the state. They're poles with a gold or bronze outline and a finial, a green background, and then generally yellow text interpreting the site that you're looking at. The SHPO is very interested in these markers and thinks they have a really high utility, allowing visitors to interpret the sites throughout Vermont. Fine. So we're going to get into the fun part, the Middlebury analysis. So for criteria, Nate, this is the evaluation at the end of all of this background I've been talking about, where you seek to determine whether or not the adverse effect is undue. We definitely have an adverse effect, but what the commission is interested in determining is whether or not that adverse effect is undue. It has four different parts, and I'll go through each of the parts individually. Number one, it's up there if anybody needs to see it or back up. Number one is the failure of an applicant to take generally available mitigating steps which a reasonable person would take to preserve the character of the site. And the bullet points below that reflect the applicant's efforts to take those steps. Number one, They undertook a multidisciplinary study of the building conditions, costs, possible uses, and determined that reuse is not a viable option, and has proposed a mitigation package which has been accepted by the State Historic Preservation Office. Number two, that mitigation package includes detailed architectural surveys of in-owned buildings outside the historic boundaries. Number three, the study objective for this survey of in-owned properties is really to try to prevent something like this from happening in the future. In other words, it would give the inn a baseline survey of all of these properties that haven't been surveyed, what their important features are, what their conditions are, what the history is, and then concluding with a determination about whether or not they're eligible for the National Register. That information is intended to assist the inn in the best stewardship it can manage for these properties. Slide, please. The second question in the middle-way analysis is interference on the part of the proposed project with the ability of the public to interpret or appreciate the historic qualities of the site. In response, the buildings will be comprehensively documented with HRDPs prior to removal, and the data shared with the State and Woodstock Historical Society for recordation and educational purposes, and the inn will commission a roadside historic marker. Effects to the historic district will be limited in this case. 14 and 16 South Street are bordered by modern buildings on three sides and Cross Street to the southeast. When I say modern, I could also say non-contributing or not historic buildings. The buildings are located in a way that their removal will not create a prominent void in an intact historic streetscape. The historic district is large, and this is discussed in the SHPO's letter, which we got this morning. The historic district is large, contains 550 buildings, of which 2 would be removed, and the effect on the district would not limit or degrade its eligibility for continued listing in the National Register. That's what Mr. Sisinski wrote in the letter that was delivered this morning. Lastly, the buildings are good representative examples of their styles and contributing in the district, but do not possess rare or highly decorative features. Slide, please. The third question is cumulative effects on historic qualities of the site by the various components of a proposed project, which, when taken together, are so significant that they create an unacceptable impact. The response, this project will not create an unacceptable impact. The project has a single component to remove 14 and 16 South Street, which have been vacant over 20 years. Conditions and rehabilitation have been studied by experts, and rehabilitation is found to be infeasible for the reasons that I've been discussing. I think the bottom is repetitive, so I'm going to skip that to the next slide, please. The fourth and last question in the undue adverse effect test, Middlebury analysis, is whether the violation of a clear written community standard, which is intended to preserve the historic qualities of the site. The first look to what a clear community standard would be the town plan. In the case of the Woodstock town plan, it contains goals, objectives, and is aspirational in tone, and leaves the specifics, in other words, the community standards, in the zoning ordinances. For example, when I talked about aspirational objectives, the town plan says, because Woodstock's environment is characteristically historic and aesthetic, the issues of historic preservation and preservation of visual environment are central to town and village planning. Woodstock's historical built environment is among its chief assets, and its integrity must be protected from unwise development. At the same time, it would be a mistake to attempt to freeze Woodstock in time. To do so would further Woodstock's drift toward a tourist-based monoculture. So in that way, the town plan is discussing balancing the promotion of historic preservation with the need to adapt and evolve, but that does not constitute a clear written community standard. Again, the town plan defers to the village zoning regulations to detail the protective language and establish that standard. Just a quick note from the Vermont Act 250 handbook supporting the applicability of zoning regulations to establish that standard. On page 36, it says a town plan or zoning ordinance is the document most often used to express a written community standard. Next slide, please. Continuing in the number 4, the last question, the violation of a clear written community standard, is that happening? The response is Section 103 of the Woodstock Village zoning regulations establishes that clear written community standard, wherein it states, it is the purpose of these regulations to implement the Woodstock plan. Village zoning regulations are specifically protective of historic resources in the village and list several criteria that must be met before a permit is granted to remove a historic property, thus establishing that written standard. Projects are weighed against the criteria by the Village Development Review Board, who vote to approve or deny zoning applications. Next slide, please. Just a little bit more about these the zoning regulations of Woodstock Village. On page 40 to 41, the zoning ordinances discuss the test that must be met before a zoning approval is granted for building removal. I don't know that folks want me to read all this, but would you like me to read these? So, I'll go ahead. Yeah. The ordinance is very protective. It basically lists the same reasons that are included in the Middlebury test itself. They include assessments of many, if not all, the factors included in my report. And after considering basically using the clear written community standard, which is reflected in these zoning ordinances, the Village Development Review Board on October 27th of this year approved the project to remove 14 and 16 South Street. And I think the concluding point there is that the project to remove those buildings is consistent with the written community standard, meeting the test in number 4. I go to the next. Yes.
Could I just add a comment? It's not a question. Or I can make it a question. Can you tell us what the vote was?
3-2.
Thank you.
I believe. Is that correct?
3-2 was
Yep.
very,
Yeah.
yes. It was not unanimous.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is my last slide. This kind of wraps it up from beginning to end. The buildings were vacant for 20 years. Repeated investigations into reuse did not pan out. My firm was engaged in discussions with SHPO were initiated. Professional evaluations from an architect, engineer, building mover, and historic preservation consultant were commissioned by the inn. Alternatives investigated include continued mothballing, relocation, and rehabilitation. The buildings were listed for sale with moving assistance offered. My report was drafted and submitted to VDHP. Follow-up meetings included the state, Greg Sasinski, who may still be online, and the state historic preservation officer. Agreement on mitigation was reached with SHPO and detailed in a revised report. Written communications from VDHP, including the letter that was submitted this morning, concur with the report's recommended findings and proposed mitigation. And then Woodstock Inn applied for and received the village zoning permit demonstrating consistency with a clear written community standard. And here we are at the Act 250 hearing.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a question? Yes, sir.
So in the village regulations, and one of the requirements for the removal of an historic house on a historic register is for plans to be presented in good faith. And that wasn't, I mean, do you consider plans that were presented for green space to be the type of plans that are referring to in the zoning regulations? Because I would take it to mean, what are you gonna be actually building there? Especially because in your report, it's specifically known that they are going to be building additional guest rooms.
No, that's a good question. I think that the zoning permit was granted for plainly for removal of the buildings and return to green space. Any construction that would happen there in the future would have to go back through this process.
What do you think the intent of the regulations is? And when it's stating that the applicant